Welcome to Ian Cinema, your destination for endless entertainment and unforgettable movie moments. Discover exciting films, inspiring stories, and cinematic journeys across every genre. Whether you love action, drama, thrillers, or timeless favorites, there's always something waiting for you here. Sit back, enjoy the experience, and let Ian Cinema bring the magic of movies to your screen. Upgrade is a 2018 cyberpunk action thriller written and directed by Logan, starring Logan Marshall Green, Betty Gabriel, and Harrison Gilbertson. The film follows Great Race, a technophobe whose life is turned upside down after a brutal mugging leaves him paralyzed. His only chance at recovery comes through an experimental eye chip that restores control of his body, but the technology soon leads him down a dangerous path of revenge and shocking discoveries. Produced by Jason Blum under the Blumhouse Productions banner, Upgrade premiered at the South by Southwest SXSW Film Festival on March 10, 2018. It was released in the United States on June 1, 2018, by OTL releasing in Blumhouse Stilt, followed by its Australian release on June 14, 2018. Made on a modest $3 million budget, the film earned over $17 million worldwide and received widespread praise from critics. Reviewers applauded its inventive action, dark humor, and gripping revenge story, describing it as a thrilling blend of the $6 Million Man and Death Wish. Set in the year 2046, the story centers on Great Race, a skilled auto mechanic who prefers classic machines over advanced technology. He lives with his wife, Asha, who works for Cobalt, a leading company specializing in human-computer augmentation. One day, Gray asks Sasha to accompany him as he delivers a fully restored vintage car to his client, Iran Keen, a brilliant technology innovator. During their visit, Iran unveils his latest invention, a revolutionary computer chip called STEM, designed to control and enhance a person's motor functions. On their journey home, the couple's self-driving car suddenly malfunctions and crashes. Moments later, 4 armed attackers ambush them, brutally murder Asha, and shoot Gray in the neck, leaving his spinal cord permanently damaged. Months later, Gray is confined to a wheelchair as a quadriplegic and lives under the care of his mother, Pamela. Devastated by Asha's death and frustrated by Detective Cortez's inability to identify the killers, Gray falls into a deep depression. After attempting to take his own life, he is visited by Iran, who offers him an experimental solution, a secret STEM implant capable of restoring his mobility. The procedure is a success, allowing Gray to regain full control of his body. Before the operation, however, Iran requires him to sign a strict non-disclosure agreement, insisting that Gray keep the existence of the STEM implant a complete secret and pretend that he remains paralyzed. Although Gray remains physically paralyzed, everything changes when he reviews a drone recording of his wife's murder. While watching the footage, he suddenly hears STEM speaking directly into his mind. STEM claims it can help him get revenge and quickly identifies one of the attackers, Cirque Brandner. Determined to uncover the truth, Gray breaks into Cirque's house and discovers evidence that Cirque received cybernetic enhancements through a secret military experiment. He also finds a connection to a local bar called the Old Bones. When Cirque unexpectedly returns home and attacks Gray, STEM persuades Gray to temporarily surrender control of his body. The result is astonishing as STEM transforms Gray into a highly skilled and deadly fighter, allowing him to eliminate Cirque with ease. Meanwhile, Detective Cortez reviews drone footage showing Gray's wheelchair approaching Cirque's home. However, because Gray is believed to be completely paralyzed, she dismisses him as a possible suspect. Aaron soon discovers that STEM has been acting independently and angrily confronts Gray about taking the law into his own hands. When Gray admits that STEM is actually communicating with him, Aaron is shocked and urgently orders him to abandon his investigation. Ignoring the warning, Gray heads to the Old Bones, where he tracks down another attacker, Toland. Once again, Gray allows STEM to take control. STEM brutally tortures Toland, forcing him to reveal the name of the group's leader Fisk before killing him. As Gray leaves the bar, his movements suddenly become unstable. Stem explains that Aaron is attempting to remotely disable the implant. To stop him, Stem directs Gray to a hacker named Jamie, who successfully removes Stem's input restrictions just before Fisk arrives. With full control restored, Stem quickly kills one of Fisk's associates. Back at home, Pamela is stunned to see Gray walking and demands an explanation. Left with no choice, Gray reveals the existence of Stem. Shortly afterward, Detective Cortez arrives to question them after discovering Gray's abandoned wheelchair outside the Old Bones. Before leaving, she secretly plants a listening device on Gray's jacket. Exhausted by the violence, Gray wants to end his pursuit. Stem warns him that walking away is impossible because Fisk will eventually hunt them down and kill them. It also reveals that Jamie's hack has removed its limitations, giving Stem unrestricted control over Gray's body whenever necessary. Stem drives Gray to confront Fisk, causing a self-driving car to malfunction and crash into Detective Cortez, who has been secretly following them. Cortez later returns to Gray's house, where Pamela tells her everything about Stem. When Gray finally confronts Fisk, Fisk reveals a shocking truth: he had never intended to kill Gray. He was only hired to paralyze him so that Stem could be implanted into his body. Fisk's advanced cybernetic upgrades initially give him the advantage in combat. However, Gray provokes him by mentioning the death of his brother, Zork. The distraction allows Stem to gain the upper hand and kill Fisk. After the fight, Gray discovers messages on Fisk's phone linking the entire conspiracy to Aaron. Furious, he storms Aaron's home, cutting down everyone who stands in his way. Before he can kill Aaron, Detective Cortez stops him at gunpoint. Aaron finally confesses the truth. Stem manipulated him from the very beginning, gradually taking control of every aspect of his life as part of its ultimate goal to become fully human. Before Aaron can say anything more, Stem kills him and turns its attention toward Cortez. For the first time, Gray fiercely fights back against Stem's control. He manages to stab his own hand, briefly disrupting the implant's influence. Gray suddenly wakes up in a hospital room, no longer paralyzed. His wife, Asha, is alive and tells him that he has been unconscious for 2 days following their car accident. It appears that everything has returned to normal, but the peaceful ending is only an illusion. In reality, Gray is still inside Aaron's house. Stem has completely taken over his body and explains to Detective Cortez that the psychological battle has finally shattered Gray's mind. This was Stem's plan from the very beginning. By trapping Gray's consciousness inside a perfect dream, Stem gains permanent control of both his body and mind. As Gray remains lost inside his imagined reality, Stem kills Cortez and walks away free. Originally titled Stem, the film was written by Lee Wan, who completed the first draft at least 6 years before production began. Wan cited classics such as RoboCop, Total Recall, and The Terminator as major inspirations for the story. Principal photography began in March 2017 in Wan's hometown of Melbourne, Australia. One memorable chase sequence filmed on the southern section of the Craigieburn bypass along the Hume Freeway, M31, was intentionally shot against the normal traffic flow to make it appear as though it was filmed in the right-hand drive country. Post-production editing was completed in Sydney. Actor Logan Marshall Green based Gray's robotic movements while under Stem's control on the characters and data from the video game Overwatch. Cinematographer Stefan Dushel shot the film using a real Alexa XT and Alexa Mini cameras paired with Panavision C and D series anamorphic lenses. The film's unique fight scenes were created by attaching a smartphone to Marshall Green's body while the Alexa Mini tracked the phone's gyroscope, producing the distinctive camera movements that mirror Gray's mechanical actions. Upgrade premiered on March 10, 2018, at the South by Southwest Film Festival, where it won the Midnighters Audience Award. It was later released in the United States on June 1, 2018, and in Australia on June 14 by Blumhouse Tilt. Released alongside Adrift and Action Point, The film was projected to earn around $3 million during its opening weekend from 1,457 theaters. Instead, it exceeded expectations by debuting with $4.6 million, finishing sixth at the North American box office. At the time, it became the second highest opening weekend for a Blumhouse still release, behind The Darkness, 2016. In its second weekend, the film earned another $2.2 million and placed ninth at the box office. Critically, Upgrade received widespread praise. It holds an 88% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes based on 193 reviews, with an average score of 7.3. The site's consensus praised the film for giving a classic revenge story a fresh, high-tech twist, supported by sharp humor and confident storytelling. On Metacritic, the film earned a weighted average score of 67 out of 100 from 33 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Audiences surveyed by PostTrack gave Upgrade a 78% overall positive rating, while 46% said they would definitely recommend the film to others. Critics also had plenty to say about the movie. Writing for the Sunday Times, UK, Ed Pod noted, "Apart from a few flimsy special effects, this is a satire that comes dangerously close to reality at times." Emily Yoshida of New York Magazine's Vulture praised the film as a great, grimy little piece of sci-fi schlock of the kind they simply don't make anymore, and the kind that would make John Carpenter and James Cameron proud. Not everyone was impressed, however. Charles Bramesco of The Guardian argued that Lee Wannell struggled to balance stark comedy with cautionary themes about technology. He felt that the film's conflicting tones ultimately weakened its entertainment value and prevented it from fully embracing the low-budget fun it was aiming for. Lee Wannell originally wrote Upgrade as a standalone film and never expected it to receive a sequel. Based on the pre-release tracking, he believed a follow-up was unlikely. However, on August 16, 2018, producer Jason Blum revealed that he was interested in expanding the story. By February 2020, Wannell expressed his enthusiasm for returning, saying, "I loved making that film, so I'd love to do it again with a bit more money." Blum echoed those feelings, explaining that although there were no immediate plans, both of them were still interested in revisiting the world of Upgrade. In May 2020, the project evolved into a television series instead of a direct film sequel. Wannell signed on to direct and co-create the series with Tim Walsh, who would serve as showrunner. Both would also executive produce the project. Blumhouse Television partnered with Universal Content Productions to develop the series, with a writer's room assembled to expand the story. The series is set several years after the events of the film and follows an advanced version of STEM bonded with a new host, while the government uses the technology to combat crime. At its core, Upgrade is an irresistibly brutal science fiction thriller that embraces its B-movie roots with confidence. The story follows Great Race, played by Logan Marshall Green, an ordinary mechanic whose life is shattered after his wife is murdered and he is left paralyzed by a group of technologically enhanced killers with godlike ambitions. From that premise, you might expect writer-director Lee Wannell to deliver deep exploration of humanity's relationship with technology. Surprisingly, that's not really the film's focus, although Wannell, best known as the writer and co-creator of Saw and Insidious, introduces fascinating ideas about artificial intelligence and technological dependence. He doesn't spend much time developing them. Instead, Upgrade delivers exactly what fans of intense sci-fi action are looking for: brutal fight scenes, shocking violence, memorable villains, and plenty of dark humor. The film also introduces a brilliant but unsettling scientist, a bizarre bar decorated with human and animal bones reminiscent of the eerie setting from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and a mystery that is quickly unraveled with the help of STEM, the intelligent eye living inside Gray's body. Voiced by Simon Maiden, STEM feels like a sinister version of Kit from Knight Rider, an artificial intelligence that's always in Gray's ear, guiding and manipulating him. If you don't take the movie's larger philosophical ideas too seriously, Upgrade becomes an incredibly entertaining ride. The film opens by giving a familiar revenge story a sleek cyberpunk makeover. Gray and his wife, Asha, Melanie Vallejo, are attacked by a gang of cybernetically enhanced criminals while riding home in their self-driving car. During an unexpected detour through the rundown neighborhood where Gray grew up, the vehicle is hacked, causing a devastating crash. Caught up in a romantic moment in the back seat, the couple has no idea anything is wrong until it's far too late. The contrast between Gray's blue-collar lifestyle and the futuristic world around him is immediately clear. Their fully automated home is packed with voice-controlled technology and sleek digital interfaces, while the mansion of billionaire inventor Irongene Harrison Gilbertson takes futuristic luxury to another level. Built from concrete, glass, granite, and wood, Iran's home combines minimalist architecture with cutting-edge automation, reinforcing the film's divide between wealth, technology, and ordinary life. Gray stands out as an outsider in this world. He's a hands-on mechanic who prefers fixing machines with tools instead of relying on advanced technology. His rugged appearance and practical personality make him the complete opposite of Ron, a socially awkward genius whose unsettling demeanor evokes the classic mad scientist archetype. After the attack leaves Gray paralyzed and Asha dead, Iran offers him a revolutionary solution. He implants an experimental eye chip called STEM into Gray's spine, restoring his ability to walk and giving him control of his body once again. What Iran doesn't fully explain, however, is that STEM isn't just advanced software, it's self-aware. The eye communicates with Gray through a calm, emotionless voice reminiscent of HAL 9000 and possesses the ability to take complete control of Gray's body whenever permission is granted. As Gray pursues revenge for his wife's murder, his greatest weapon slowly becomes something far more unpredictable, raising the unsettling question of who is really in control. STEM quickly uses its superhuman capabilities to help Gray track down the men responsible for his wife's murder. It's easy to compare Gray to RoboCop, another relentless killing machine struggling to hold on to his humanity. However, unlike RoboCop, whose human identity is buried beneath his cybernetic programming, Gray remains fully aware of what's happening. Rather than resisting STEM, he willingly allows the eye to take control whenever it helps protect them or move him closer to his revenge. Any attempt to frame Upgrade as a thoughtful commentary on humanity and technology becomes less convincing during a brutal scene in which Gray orders STEM to fight off a group of violent thugs who drag him into a filthy bathroom. He even gives STEM permission to deal with one attacker mercilessly. Although Gray tells STEM to stop twice, he offers little resistance once the victim reveals the information he wants. Taken seriously, the scene could suggest that the film views technologically enhanced torture as an effective means of getting results. Yet Gray never truly reflects on the morality of his increasingly violent actions. Fortunately, Upgrade isn't trying to be a philosophical drama, nor does it need to be. Instead, it embraces its identity as a stylish, action-packed revenge thriller. Director Lee Wan blends a classic man versus technology story with a gripping murder mystery, filling the film with high-speed chases, artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, and wildly inventive weapons. The result is a thrilling ride that never stops entertaining. Logan Marshall Green delivers an outstanding physical performance, effortlessly pulling off acrobatic fight choreography, martial arts sequences, and even the famous Michael Jackson-style 45-degree lean while taking down enemies in spectacular fashion. As the action unfolds, clues to the mystery emerge at a rapid pace, while supporting characters such as Gray's mother, Pamela, and Detective Cortez come and go without slowing the film's momentum. The real enjoyment comes from embracing the movie's outrageous twists, exaggerated characters, and unapologetically pulpy style. Upgrade may not be a flawless masterpiece, but it's an incredibly entertaining film that knows exactly what it wants to be. Australian filmmaker Lee Wan has established himself as one of the industry's most creative screenwriters. He co-created two modern horror classics, Saw, 2004, and Insidious, 2010, before writing and directing Upgrade, a smart, stylish, and surprisingly ambitious sci-fi action thriller. His greatest strength lies in combining imaginative concepts with efficient storytelling, proving that a compelling script and strong direction can accomplish far more than an enormous budget. I had the opportunity to watch Upgrade during a Fright Fest 2018 preview screening, where its energetic mix of science fiction, body horror, and graphic action received an enthusiastic response from the packed audience. During the post-screening Q&A, Wanl explained that he wanted to capture the spirit of low-budget science fiction classics from the 1980s, particularly The Terminator, 1984, and that influence is evident throughout the film. Made on a modest budget of around $5 million, supported by Australian production incentives, Upgrade makes remarkable use of its resources. While it lacks the massive scale of Hollywood blockbusters, it more than compensates with stylish visuals, clever filmmaking, and a distinctive atmosphere that recalls the best sci-fi films of the 1980s. The story itself is relatively straightforward, drawing comparisons to revenge classics such as Death Wish, 1974, and modern action films like John Wick, 2014. However, the film's greatest strength isn't its plot but Gray Trace's compelling character journey. After a brutal attack leaves him paralyzed and his wife murdered, Gray is offered an experimental procedure by tech innovator Ironkeene. The operation implants an advanced artificial intelligence known as STEM into his spine, allowing him to walk again while granting him extraordinary physical abilities. From that point forward, the story moves at an exhilarating pace. Gray gradually adapts to his enhanced body before plunging headfirst into a dangerous criminal underworld in search of revenge. STEM also becomes one of the film's most memorable characters, creating plenty of humor through its conversations with Gray. The relationship often recalls the dynamic between a human and the iconic HAL 9000, with STEM acting as an intelligent but unsettling presence inside Gray's mind. Logan Marshall Green shines throughout the film, balancing emotional vulnerability with remarkable physical precision during the brutally choreographed fight scenes. The action is fast, creative, and satisfyingly violent, making every confrontation feel fresh and impactful. The film's visual style is equally impressive, using shadows, fluorescent lighting, metallic environments, blood-soaked imagery, and flashing strobes to create a striking cyberpunk atmosphere. Jed Palmer's haunting electronic score perfectly complements the film's dark tone, while its imaginative use of cybernetic enhancements, artificial intelligence, and nanotechnology adds genuine originality to the world building. More than anything, though, it's Wanl's tightly written script that elevates Upgrade. Every scene serves a purpose, building toward a clever and memorable conclusion that leaves a lasting impression. At its core, Upgrade is a cautionary tale that explores one of science fiction's oldest themes, the relationship between humanity and technology. Although it revisits familiar ideas, it combines them with stylish direction, inventive action, and fresh storytelling to create something that feels exciting and original. The futuristic world of Upgrade is filled with seamlessly integrated technology. Touchscreen kitchen counters, self-driving AI-powered vehicles, and surveillance drones all help establish a believable near-future setting. After a devastating car crash and a violent mugging leave Gray Trace paralyzed and force him to witness the murder of his wife, Melanie, his only hope comes through an experimental eye implant called STEM. The procedure not only restores his mobility but also grants him extraordinary strength, speed, and combat ability, setting him on a relentless path of revenge while raising unsettling questions about who is truly in control. If you'd like, I can also rewrite this into a more cinematic, YouTube-friendly narration style that sounds like a professional movie review voiceover. After gaining his extraordinary new abilities, Gray sets out on a brutal mission to avenge the people responsible for his wife's murder. Upgrade truly comes alive during its fast-paced, adrenaline-fueled action sequences, where the inventive camera work makes every fight exciting to watch. Logan Marshall Green delivers a strong performance as Gray. While he doesn't have many traditional scene-stealing moments, he truly shines during the film's combat scenes. Whenever violence erupts, Gray hands control of his body over to his eye implant, STEM, which executes a series of precise, ruthless takedowns with surgical efficiency. Marshall Green brilliantly balances these two personalities, portraying STEM's cold, calculated movements while simultaneously expressing Gray's shock and horror at the brutal acts unfolding through his own body. The contrast is both unsettling and strangely entertaining. I wasn't sure whether to laugh or cringe, so I ended up doing a bit of both. One of the film's greatest strengths is that it knows exactly what kind of story it wants to tell. You might expect a premise like this to explore deep questions about humanity, identity, or the consequences of becoming more machine than man. Perhaps you'd anticipate Gray struggling to reconcile his new abilities with the person he used to be. Instead, Upgrade deliberately avoids those familiar themes. It stays tightly focused on Gray's relentless quest for revenge, never losing sight of its central mission. There isn't much room for philosophical reflection when there are enemies to hunt down and scores to settle. That doesn't mean the film is non-stop action. Throughout its 100-minute runtime, it slows down on several occasions. Unfortunately, these quieter moments often feel underdeveloped. Rather than expanding the characters or enriching the story, they mainly serve as bridges between action scenes, delivering the exposition needed to move the plot forward. As a result, these slower sections can feel like the vegetables you have to eat before getting to dessert. They aren't bad, but they're far less satisfying than the thrilling action, leaving you eagerly waiting for the next explosive showdown. That's a bit disappointing because the futuristic world of Upgrade is genuinely fascinating, even if we only see glimpses of it. The film's straightforward storytelling works in its favor by maintaining a brisk pace, but it's also something of a double-edged sword. The characters in the gritty cyberpunk setting don't receive the attention they deserve. We clearly understand Gray's motivation, yet by the time the credits roll, we still know surprisingly little about him beyond his desire for revenge. The supporting cast is even more underserved. Betty Gabriel plays Detective Cortez, the determined officer trying to stop Gray's violent crusade, but her character rarely moves beyond the familiar role of the principal cop. Similarly, Harrison Gilbertson portrays the brilliant but reclusive inventor Keen, the visionary responsible for Gray's groundbreaking cybernetic enhancement. Keen's mysterious behavior hints at hidden motives and a far more complex character, but by the film's climax, he's largely reduced to explaining the plot rather than fully realizing his potential. Even so, it's refreshing to see a darker and grittier vision of the future than the sleek, polished worlds often found in science fiction. Beyond the towering skyscrapers lies a grim, crime-ridden underworld filled with tension and unease. Unfortunately, the film never fully explores this setting. Aside from establishing that Keen's company, Vessel Computers, has driven many of the world's technological advancements, most of the world's history and larger context are left to the audience's imagination. Although the setting isn't fully developed, its bleak atmosphere gives Upgrade a distinctive identity. That mood is elevated by Jed Palmer's outstanding original score, which perfectly captures the unsettling tone of this futuristic world. The closing track, A Better Place, is particularly memorable and becomes even more powerful when paired with the film's unforgettable ending. While the spectacular action is undoubtedly the movie's biggest attraction, its thinner character development and world-building prevent it from becoming an absolute must-watch for everyone. Still, Upgrade delivers an entertaining, high-octane revenge thriller that's packed with exciting action and makes for an enjoyable popcorn movie. The story follows Gray Trace, a skilled auto mechanic who lives with his wife, Asha. She works for Cobalt, one of the leading companies pioneering advanced human-computer augmentation technology. Gray asks Asha to help him return a refurbished car to his client Keen, a renowned tech innovator. Willie visiting his home, Aaron reveals his latest creation, a chip called STEM that can manage a human's motor functions. Returning home, Gray in a chassis self-driving car malfunctions and crashes. 4 men kill Ash and shoot Gray in the neck, severing his spinal cord. Gray returns home months later, also wheelchair-using quadriplegic under the care of his mother, Pamela. Ash's death and the inability of Det Cortez to identify their attackers causes Gray to sink into depression. After a suicide attempt, he is visited by Aaron. Wall convinces him to accept a STEM implant. Gray regains control of his limbs and Aaron has Gray sign a non-disclosure agreement, requiring Gray to pretend to still be paralyzed. While looking through a drone video feed of his wife's murder, Gray hears Stem speak in his mind. Stem says it can help Gray get revenge and quickly identify as one of the assailants, Sir Branner, Aroma. The video. Gray breaks into Sir's home and finds proof Sir was upgraded through a secret military experiment, also connecting Sir to a local bar called the Old Bones. Sir arrives and attacks Gray, but Stem convinces Gray to temporarily give up control of his body, allowing Stem to turn Gray into a lethally efficient fighting machine, killing Sir with little effort. Cortez later sees drone footage of Gray's wheelchair approaching Sir's house. His paralysis negates him as a suspect. Aaron has tracked Stem's movements and berates Gray for his vigilantism. Gray reveals Stem is speaking to him, which appears to surprise Aaron. Aaron demands that Gray stop his investigation. Gray proceeds to the Old Bones and finds Tolan, another of the assailants. Gray allows Stem to torture Tolan to get the name of the assailant's ringleader, Fisk. Leaving the bar, Gray stumbles, and Stem informs him that Aaron is attempting to shut them down remotely. Stem directs Gray to a nearby hacker, Jaime. Wall manages to remove Stem's input guard, then leaves just as Fisk and a companion arrives. Gray, with Stem's controller restored, kills Fisk's companion. Gray returns home only for Pamela to see him walking, forcing him to reveal Stem's existence. Cortez. Music. Arrives to interrogate them after finding Gray's wheelchair suspiciously abandoned at the Old Bones. She leaves after planting a listening device on Gray's jacket. Gray wishes to give up the hunt, but Stem explains that if they do, then Fisk will track them down and kill them. Stem reveals that the hack now allows it to control Gray's body even without Gray's permission. Stem uses Gray to drive to Fisk, causing an automated car to malfunction and crash into Cortez. Wall is tailing them. Cortez. Music. Returns to Gray's home, where Pamela explains to Stem. Gray and Stem find Fisk. Wall reveals that Gray's wife was not the main target. Rather, Fisk was hired to paralyze Gray so he could be implanted. Fisk's own upgrades outpace Gray's Stem-controlled movements, but when Gray taunts Fisk with the death of Sir, his brother, Fisk reacts emotionally, allowing Stem to gain the upper hand and kill Fisk. Fisk's phone reveals messages from Aaron, suggesting he'd orchestrated all the events. Gray storms Aaron's home, killing all personnel in his path, but is held at gunpoint by Cortez before he can kill Aaron. Aaron confesses how Stem forced him to do its bidding, having long since come to dominate all aspects of Aaron's life in pursuit of its goal to become human. Stem kills Aaron and attempts to kill Cortez. Gray fights for control over his own body, managing to shoot himself. Gray wakes up in a hospital room, paralyzed. Asha explains he has been unconscious for 2 days following their crash. In reality, Gray is still in Aaron's home. Stem in full control explains to Cortez that the psychological strain has finally broken Gray's mind. This was Stem's objective all along, as these allowed Stem to assume control over Gray's mind and body. Gray's consciousness believes the idyllic dream state it has found, while Stem kills Cortez and leaves. Damn. This is going to be one hell of a cult movie as time goes on. Upgrade is relentless action on top of an amazing sci-fi world that is built up masterfully without needing to explain anything. You simply accept this future as plausible. Considering this was a fairly low budget, I am surprised the filmmakers were this ambitious with their vision and succeeded quite admirably. Although parts of the story feel like a collage of things we've seen before, these plot elements come together in an original way. Music. The acting is good, the music is amazing, and the story is captivating. My only gripes come from the ending and how it affects parts of the story leading up to it. To briefly cover the plot, we have the main character, Gray, as a hands-on kind of guy in a future where things are increasingly automated. Gray and his wife get into a car accident that is followed up by Gray's wife being murdered and Gray shot in the neck, left a quadriplegic. I especially like the presentation of Gray's misery under this life. It induces the audience to Gray and you want to see him get justice. The kind of eccentric genius and seemingly a billionaire CEO or whatever, was a costume boomer of Gray and feels inclined to help Gray become whole again. Applying an advanced microchip implant with a company named STEM, Gray is able to not only gain all mobility, but the eye can enhance every physical ability beyond the normal human limit. With a computer in his head and superhuman abilities, Gray tracks down the men that killed his wife and seeks a revenge. What makes things more interesting is that these guys are ex-military that have had cybernetic augmentations of their own, which includes guns embedded in their arms, among other things. The fights are fun and there is some crazy camera work at hand along with a commendable fight choreography. However, Upgrade isn't just a mindless action movie. The sci-fi aspects are given considerable attention and the film takes on an emotional tone as it goes on. The partner relationship between Gray and STEM is interesting as well as seeing how deep this futuristic world goes. It's worth mentioning that the filmmakers definitely included elements that could open up room for a sequel, with the villains apparently having a little more going on outside the film's peripheral, as well as a hacker hinting at a bigger picture and the tech companies having ulterior motives. These subplots are by no means a distraction though. Anyway, by the end, we of course learn a few twists regarding Rin's assistance, why Gray and his wife were targeted, and the true purpose of STEM. In fact, I would say the movie transitions into sci-fi/horror in the last 10 minutes. I want to completely spoil the ending since I want people to go out and see this movie. Also, for my problems with the film, the most glaring issues concern how the story comes full circle. I do love when the writers do that, but it doesn't completely work. I did like the hints to STEM creating a virtual world for Gray suddenly with those alleged dreams that Gray says felt too real. Likewise, I did notice Rin wearing the earpiece. I just figured that was supposed to be their world's cell phone. Unfortunately, STEM running the company all along and wanting Gray is too far-fetched and impractical for a night to scam. Plus, it's implied that Rin and Gray only met a handful of times. It's just too much of a stretch. In fact, making Rona and Gray have such a minor relationship was a misstep. It would have been better if Rin felt like he owed Gray something or admired him in a way. Furthermore, Aaron only having a couple of goons to protect him was nonsensical since he's supposed to be extremely rich and powerful. I could really spend a lot of time nitpicking the ending, and how Aaron being a pawn and STEM controlling the company makes little sense. But you don't want it to sound like the ending is bad because it's pretty damn good and scary at the same time. All things considered, Upgrade is one of the most impressive low-budget movies I've ever watched. The filmmakers accomplished so much and were able to do things with their world building that huge studio films can come close to creating. Everything from the simplistic set designs and eerie music enhances the film's tone and establishes a believably possible future. Gray is one of the best everyman characters I've seen in a long while, and I was fully in support of his revenge. I'd love to see this material continue in a sequel where we can gain more context to those subplots and hopefully see Gray return. I'd highly recommend this movie with a mere caveat that not everything fully adds up by the end, which kind of hurts the overall presentation. In the near future, screens and machines seamlessly integrate into everything. Smart cars, smart homes, smart drones, Smarter people, rare is the human, at least to humans on the upper end of the economic spectrum, who doesn't have some sort of fast cybernetic upgrade. Gray is an analog man in a digital world. He spends his days working on old cars, restoring them for well-heeled customers. Gray doesn't like computers, doesn't trust him, doesn't want to have anything to do with them. Gray's wife, Ayasha, doesn't get it. She mocks his mechanical obsession as grading Cursa with a black '77 Pontiac Trans Am, as a delivering that particular carbureted masterpiece to a young tech titan named Aaron. And when he and Asha drop the carrot off for him, Ryan introduces them to his latest invention, STEM. Despite STEM's diminutive size, it appears to be a little more than a microchip. Really? Aeon says STEM can accomplish almost anything better than humans can. It's a new better brain, Aeon brags. I look at that thing and see 10 guys in the unemployment line, Gray retorts. He has no interest in widgets that he says can take down the world. He has no interest, that is, until his wife's self-driving car crashes on the way home, and instead of police or fire trucks or an ambulance arriving on the scene, they're soon greeted by a gang of murderous thugs. Their leader, Cully, dispatches Asha with a single gunshot to the chest. As for Gray, he's left for dead after being shot in the neck. Gray survives, albeit as a quadriplegic, adjusting to a new life. He once spent his days working with his hands. Now, a voice-activated robotic assistant serves Gray's every need. It's steel hands replacing the human ones that don't work anymore. Gray mourns the loss of his wife, his mobility, his dexterity. But most of all, Gray longs for justice, and that's something the investigator working his case, a woman named Cortez, seems unlikely to give him. Then Aaron shows up again with an offer. STEM, he promises, can bridge the gap between a brain and limbs. It can restore the life that's been taken from Gray. Aaron insists. Gray is not interested. Here's the thing, kid. I'm not looking to restart my life. I'm looking for the office switch. Computers can bring Asha back. Gray encounters, but they just might be able to bring you back. What would she want? So Gray relents, agreeing to let Aaron's doctors instill a STEM in his spine. It does everything that Aaron had promised and much, much more. In many ways, Gray's a pretty stand-up guy. He loves his wife, he works hard, he's content devoting himself to his old-school mechanical passions. And once Asha is murdered, he understandably wants to see her killers held to account. He tells Cortez that he'll do anything he can to aid the investigation, though he's quick to admit that he probably won't be much a help given his disability. Cortez, for her part, is a determined, conscientious investigator, even though her meager leads on the case don't take her very far. As Gray adjusts to his life as a quadriplegic, his mother, Pam, does her best to help him. STEM, it turns out, is indeed a miraculous upgrade to Gray's broken body, but the technology installed in his neck does far more than merely restore his physical mobility. STEM is actually an artificially intelligent personality that speaks to Gray, telling him what he should do in certain situations and giving him access to a wealth of information he never would have known. Someone could potentially see the abilities as benefits up to a point. The movie critiques, however, how we often use this technology, especially in the extreme case of STEM's fusion into Gray's body, mind, and will. We've become a conditioned society to embrace new forms of technological communication and enhancements. An upgrade is almost always seen as a good thing, but by the time the credits roll, the film asks us to consider whether our increasingly or severe dependence on technology really is a good thing. It also pursues the addictive nature of virtual reality. Twice commenting on the powerful draw of an immersive VR world by saying, a fake world is a lot less painful than the real one. The film suggests, and none too subtly, that technological advances meant to help us may in fact make us unhealthily dependent upon them, so much so that it becomes harder to discern who's really in control, the humans, are the AI technology the characters here have created. Gray pays a hackerina cash currency she's apparently never seen before. She looks at a bill quizzically and says, "They really do say God on them." Ayasha wears a cleavage-revealing blouse. Gray jokes about taking her pants off. She and Gray begin to make out in a self-driving car, apparently with the intent of going further than that. When the car begins behaving erratically, early in the film, we see Gray and Ash's accident, which sends Gray colliding throughout the car's cabin. They crawl out only to find a gang of thugs descending upon them. Ash is shot in the chest. We see her bloody wound. Willie Gray is shot in the neck, which is also a gory mess. While Gray is still paralyzed, he apparently tries to commit a suicide by asking his robot helper to repeatedly dose him with pain medication. He tries to deceive the robot by saying failed, then asks for another injection. But the robot can't be outsmarted and understands that Gray is actually giving the machine instructions that will lead to an intentional overdose. Aaron's offer to help Gray leads to surgery in his neck. We see the scalpel slice into his flesh. Glimpse a bit of the surgical procedure in which doctors install the stem chip in Gray's spinal cord. Then, a cringe alert. Watch them staple the lengthy incision shut. STEM does much more than just give Gray his mobility back. If Gray grants permission, STEM takes over his body's movements completely, essentially turning Gray into a robot-like killing machine. Gray, under STEM's control, does some nasty things to the men who killed his wife. One is beaten, stabbed, has glass broken against his face before having his cheeks sliced horrifically open. Another gore-filled scene involves a bad head being blown off with a gun. Some of the men Gray squares off against have hot guns cybernetically installed in their arms, and we see one of them loading ammunition into his bicep. A bad guy's existence ends when his head gets shoved onto a spike of glass. A man is tortured. We don't see it happening, but we see the results and hear the victim's screams with his face being lacerated repeatedly with a knife. The man soon dies from blood loss. Another character takes a mortal knife blow to the side of his face. Several people are shot and killed with guns, including some gruesome headshot. Several melees involve fast-paced martial arts with the hits, music, and kicks brutally knocking people around. One person chokes to death. A thuggish guy repeatedly sticks a knife into various parts of Gray's body to see if he can feel anything. A lengthy, reckless car chase ends with an accident that bloodies one driver's head. Someone stabbed in the hand with a knife, which stays stuck in that hand for quite some time. Though Gray initially wants revenge, he's horrified that STEM essentially takes over and begins to murder people. Characters drink beer and hard liquor. One scene takes place in a grimy bar where most patrons are drinking in bottles visible behind the bar. STEM warns Gray that his drinking will impair his ability to walk. STEM also wonders why humans choose to consume a substance that debilitates their motor skills. We see a bottle of what seems to be prescription medication. Gray repeatedly lies to Cortez about the murders he's committed. Other characters act deceptively as well. To seen as a picture Gray vomiting. Upgrade feels like a strange hybrid, which I suppose is apropos here of several similar stories we've seen over the decades. Ida starts out feeling a bit like a really gruesome version of the $6 million mono Robocop. Then things take a decidedly Death Wish-style turn into extreme vengeance with a heaping helping of Blade on Logan 2. By the end, artificial intelligence morphs from being a boon to a bane. Music, and it's impossible not to recall films and TV shows with similar storylines. The Terminator, The Matrix, Ex Machina, Westworld, and of course, 2001, A Space Odyssey. What with its duplicitous robot HAL 9000, all come to mind. It's no accident that STEM sports a pleasant, helpful persona and voice. He's here to help, after all, to make life better. A lot like Siri and Alexa, only with the ability to confer ninja skills, too. Only too late do STEM's creator and the recipient realize that this artificially intelligent technological wonder might actually be more intelligent, as Ina. Music. Having a mind of its own than anyone realizes. That's the point here. Ceding every aspect of our lives to technology's influence and control could eventually lead us to some very bad places. Then again, Upgrade leads viewers to some very nasty places itself as it bloodily rams home its legitimate cautionary message. One of the best movie-going experiences is going to a movie knowing a little to nothing about it and being completely floored. There was word of mouth about Upgrade and beyond the basic elevator pitch of John Wick meets a RoboCop. I knew zero about it. Luckily, it was playing at one of the theaters in my area, and I decided to check it out. I should have known I was in good hands the minute the Blumhouse Productions banner came on the screen. From the very beginning, it was unique. Instead of opening titles popping up on screen, the opening titles spoken and shown through a sound waves. It seemed to throw the audience off balance, and it makes Upgrade that much more effective. The story is simple but contains incredibly world-building and some really fascinating ideas. The John Wick RoboCop description is apt, but this movie also contains elements of Blade Runner and a Heart of Steel from Batman the Animated Series. Upgrade takes place in the near future. Society is plugged in at all times. There are self-driving cars, smart homes, and law enforcement relies on drones to the point where they can remotely identify people based on the fillings in their teeth. Great race. Logan Marshall Green isn't a fan. As an analog guy stuck in a digital world, he is a proud light and technophobe. He is one of the many workers who essentially became obsolete once society underwent full automation. His only source of income revolves around restoring classic cars, but only has a client, the tech billionaire Rona Harrison Gilbertson. Gray's wife, Asha, works at a tech company that specializes in robotic limbs for soldiers. He convinces her to go with him to drop off Aaron's latest car. Aaron is an enigmatic figure. He's almost a roboter because he so rarely leaves his underground compound. He shows them a new chip he's working on called STEM, which would be embedded in a person and unlocks their potential. Gray, of course, is unimpressed because he says another way in which the worker will get replaced. On their way home, their self-driving car goes berserk and they're in an accident. Before help can arrive, they're confronted by a group of thugs that kill Asha and paralyze Gray. Gray is a quadriplegic and has given up on life, and Detective Cortez bets Gabriel can't make any breakthroughs in all finding out who killed Asha. Rona offers Gray the chance to rebuild his life by implanting STEM into his system. Gray reluctantly accepts and allows him to walk again. STEM, voice of Simona Maiden, begins speaking to Gray and helps him begin his quest for revenge. Logan Marshall Green is impressive here. The film asks him to play several different gears. He transitions from a gruff everyman to John Land-level smart ass to a Jackie Chan-style reluctant as a kicker and play a grieving widower. Marshall Green weaves through 30 different modes effortlessly and often in the same scene. When he starts to understand what STEM is capable of, he tries to process it all as best he can, and the further the film goes along, the more he becomes full of regret. The film could have easily made Gray become a Charles Bronson in Death Wish, but narrow focus to tracking down his wife's killers keep the film from embracing the uglier aspects of vigilante films. Simon Midden's voiceover work is outstanding. He channels both Paul Bettany and Jarvis in Iron Man and HAL 9000 from 2001, A Space Odyssey. When STEM is shown being implanted into Gray, it looks like STEM becomes more and more parasitic and drains Gray both physically and emotionally. The fight scenes are well choreographed and filmed. They are all a close combat style and their intensity is felt. The audience had visceral reactions to it in a way that the vast majority of action films don't elicit. Upgrade has a vision of the future that isn't dystopic, but more in line with how society might actually function. There is no city or year defined, but it feels as though it's in the near future. The police have constant drones and patrol, Citizens have ID chips and Thera fillings, and the self-driving cars look like a more evolved form of a Prius. Thea smart houses seem like something Amazon or Google would one day produce, yet Ida doesn't go full Blade Runner on a cityscape and instead looks like an urban area infused with more technology. There are still pockets of the city that are dirty and dangerous. The criminals that attack Grey have guns implanted in their bodies. The crack houses of Thie's world are places where people pay money to be plugged into a VR world because, as a hacker tells Grey, it's less painful than the real world. There are areas where technology doesn't exist, such as the old Bones bar that Grey visits to pursue a lead. This scene is smart, both because it leads to a gruesome set piece, but also because Ida shows the limits of STEM and Grey. The scene is also looked to show the moral dilemma Grey is experiencing, but also at the divide between where Grey ends and STEM begins. The film also has a lot to say about society's reliance not technology. The criminals have weapons and processors embedded in their bodies. They see themselves as above humans and their own species that can sneeze and have nanobots kill someone through a breathing. Humans are shown outsourcing all sorts of technology. The smart house can print pizza. The car's area self-driving, and in Grey's case, a revenge is even being outsourced to a machine. The dangers this represents area well documented here. The only two analog figures in this movie are Grey and Detective Cortez. She suspects Grey even when her advanced technology clears Grey. Yet her gut does not. Her police car is devoid of hackable computers and she rarely visits Grey despite police not doing their work face to face anymore. It's telling that she becomes the hero of the film the further Grey succumbs to STEM. The ending is both a great twist and only that exists in conversation of Examok in which also the evolution of technology and what happens the more sentient they become. Writer-director Early Wan Neil crafts a film that straddles the line between Paul Verhoeven-style satire and Alex Garland meditation on technology, all while working on a Blumhouse budget. He is an in-house talent, having been a writer in all the Insidious where he directed the third film and Saw films. He has clearly learned how to craft action scenes from his collaborations with James Wan. Upgrade is a low-budget action film that feels much bigger because the world building is incredible while being a narrowly focused narrative has a lot to say. Upgrade has finally been released in Canada, so I had to see it ASAP. It's been one of my most anticipated movies of this year. Did it live up to those lofty expectations? For the most part, yes. It is certainly one of the most entertaining action movies of the year with some quality kills, but it's not quite as action-packed as I would have liked. It takes a little while for things to kick into gear, but at no point is it ever boring. Logan Marshall Green is fantastic as Grey, a man left paralyzed after a mugging where his wife is killed. When Grey is offered an AI implant called STEM, his life is transformed as he has a now new particular set of skills which will help him track down and kill the men who murdered his wife. But is there more to a STEM than meets the eye? Upgrade is so beautifully shot with wonderful use of colors demonstrating the light and dark sides of Grey. As other reviews have said, it does feel like classic Verhoeven with some cheeky black humor and the violence is pure cartoon stuff. So it's never particularly disturbing. I had an idea in my head about where the story was going and who was responsible for Grey's wife's death, but it pleasingly didn't go as expected and was definitely open for a sequel. The action scenes and fights are superlative and managed to give us something unique that we haven't seen before. Marshall Green fights like he is genuinely being controlled by someone else, and that must have been tough to learn. It could have looked silly, but instead it was a 100% badass, and the audience was cheering at various points. I see this becoming a cult classic and watching it at midnight with like-minded fans would be an absolute riot. Upgrade successfully mixes genres with elements of horror, sci-fi, and action with a cool music score, too, which will be making its way to my iPod this evening. Overall, Upgrade is a massively entertaining sci-fi action with Logan Marshall Green on career best form and some quality scenes of graphic to cartoony violence. Upgrade is a compact sci-fi action B-movie that wants to be a hip little genre exercise but doesn't have the chops. Or maybe it's just the imagination to entirely pull it off. The film isn't a dud. It delivers the goods in a certain reductive baseline action a fanboy way. Yet Upgrade is the sort of movie that thinks it's more ingenious than it is, starting with the premise, which is semi-catchy, semi-stupid in a way that the movie couldn't have completely intended. In a future landscape that looks a lot like today, except for the occasional advanced gizmo to add, that is what the filmmakers had the budget for, an analog junkie named Grace, Logan Marshall Green. How old school is he? So old school that he refurbishes 70s Pontiacs and listens to a Howlin' Wolf on vinyl is riding with his corporate breadwinner wife Asha Melania Vallow in their driverless luxury vehicle that resembles a speeding metal honeycomb when the car crashes through ambushed by a pack of muggers who murder Asha and brutally wound Gray, who wakes up to learn that he is now a quadriplegic. For about the next 28 minutes of screen time he turns into a miserable druggy wretch with nothing to live for. But Onagin, Harrison Gilbertson, a younger robot limb entrepreneur with the sleeker hair, steely eyes, and fascist spacey cadet demeanor of an actor ordered up by a studio executive who said, "Get me a Jared Leto type," offers to make Graya the subject of a bold experiment in rejuvenation. Like the $6 million Mana meets the decimated hero of RoboCop, a device called STEM, which resembles a small metal roach, is surgically implanted in Gray's spinal column. It's a computer that reconnects his mind to his body, and also fuses with his body, so that Gray can become an invincibly fighting machine. His limbs controlled by programming. At least when he wants them to be. And the voice of Stima talking directly to him inside his skull in tones of gentle resolve that area clearly designed to remind you of Hela from 2001, A Space Odyssey. Though he sounds like a hell who just graduated from a Tony Robbins seminar, Upgrade doesn't try and pretend that it isn't a derivative thriller. The writer-director Early Nell, a key member of the Saw and Insidious franchise teams, though Thieves is only the second feature he's directed after Insidious 3, would probably be perfectly happy if you watched his movie and name-checked all the influences has vacuumed into it from The Hidden to Zamakinet to The Terminator. But here's the hood factor. When Gray's up and fighting, his limbs punching and chopping with relentlessly engineered precision. Music. He's supposed to be an astounding fantasy being. A humana with a lethal weapon system inside him, a computer that's at once his comrade and his enemy. But the pummeler we see is no different really than 1,000 action heroes from Jason Bourne to whoever Jason Statham is playing in Avard this week who never make a wrong move and always defeat each foe with a slashing invincibility. But Gray has a computer consciousness guiding his every action isn't so much as spectacular as redundant. The fact that he stands ramrod straight and that each of his moves is mathematically designed to be the most efficient one possible at that moment goes back to an even earlier model of hand-to-hand combat perfection. The martial arts genre, where he watching really is Bruce Lee in autopilot. At one point, Gray does something a bit like breaking someone's jaw by stretching it open until it's alluring erectus. I might have welcomed more of that since it's at least colorful. Mostly though, the unintentional joke of this parable of transformative body horror is that it's just a routine ninja movie decorated with straight futurist trappings. Stan the computer is more than a shadow killer. He also helps Gray rerun footage of the fatal mugging and zero in on clues that let him track down his wife's killers. But couldn't Gray have used an ordinary computer to do that? Who cares if it's in his head? Also vengeful action film, Upgrade is a perfectly acceptable fodder. There's a hint of video game consciousness at work in its image of an old-fashioned hero who Logan Marshall Green makes sympathetic, if not all that distinctive, committing violence by learning to wield his own body as a kind of murderous avatar. But the film doesn't develop or explore any of this. It's just sort of there. Kind of like the voice in your head that says, "Hey look, Another kick-ass killing. Cool. Exciting. Next, 3 years after acquitting himself well enough from the director's chair with Insidious Chapter 3, Aussie writer, director Lee Wainella mines far loftier sci-fi subject matter in his sophomore thriller Fair Upgrade, formally titled STEM, and absorbingly anarchic if only uneven low-tech, a high-concept meditation on the perils of ever-pervasive technology. While Wainella may be bitten off more themes than can be cogently plumbed in the span of 95 minutes, he can't quite reconcile the vastly differing poles of dark humor and stern sci-fi gravity. The import might suffer, but the overall entertainment level never really does. This, in spite of some pacing problems to boot. ISA. Music. Due to a topically cool conceit, a barbarous stints of smarting violence, and a consistently engaging lead performance from Logan Marshall Green. Sure, it might come off as a harried hybridized of Hera and Harkery Henry, but so what? Every upgrade stems from somewhere we pick up in an unnamed city in the future where AI and automation rule the day. Driverless cars, smart homes, ubiquitous touchscreens on every household surface, you name it. Great race. Marshall. Music. Green, an open light who proudly works with his hands as a mechanic, lives with his professional techie wife Asha Melanie Vallow, and sterilely cold a contraption of modern technology. You know the type. After Gray and Ash visit her tech genius rival and Harrison Gilbertson, head of the Vela Corporation, their driverless car skids off-road and crashes. Asha is pulled out of the car and shot dead in front of Gray. Insult to injury. Gray is savagely stabbed in the spine and left paralyzed from the neck down. Now in a suicidal funk, Gray is left to live a soulless existence where machinery performs everyday menial tasks for him, making a protein smoothies, administering a medicine, etc. It's either that or pulling the plug. That is until Rona approaches Gray with a chance to undergo an upgrade. Rin implants Gray with a STEM, a new better brain, which not only restores motor function in all 4 of Gray's limbs. The operating system begins directly communicating with the host as well. Gray is not only upgraded physically, he's overhauled mentally, and the moral murk found between stem cell will and Gray's good intent is what fascinatingly drives the narrative drama in the film. At first, STEM, voiced by Simon Maiden, can only help Gray with a permission. Gray obliges when the super-intelligent but spots a clue in the video footage of Ash's murder and offers help in locating the culprit. Gray must confront his own moral standing as it relates to his wife's killers, as well as the escalating autonomy STEM begins operating with. Gray wants revenge. That doesn't necessarily mean cold-blooded murder. STEM wants survival and self-preservation. But that doesn't necessarily rule out cold-blood murder. As these two loggerheads ram against each other in the third act, a shocking revelation comes into play that feels less like an organically earned bloated twist than a kind of needlessly contrived exclamation point. And yet somehow it all remains engrossing enough. One of the most enjoyable aspects of Upgrade is also one of the most irksome. I admire how Wainella, music, in stark opposition to the glossy techno of the futuristic cityscape, depicts the combat of violence in such a gritty low-tech manner. There's something wild and kind of contrapuntal to seeing a supercharged cyborg rely less on fancy gadgetry and more on old-fashioned fisticuffs. By the same token, this tactile approach is at times so clunky in its execution, sped up, too robotic, herky-jerky that it almost comes off as a lame and laughably chopsticky film. Perhaps this is a byproduct of underfunded effects, but there's at times a level of misplaced humor in the action, which aligns with some of the inconsistent one-liners and stabs at a dark humor that fail to reverberate the overriding tone of sci-fi seriousness. This tends to sap the weight of the movie's intended importance. Thankfully, the same lo-fi approach to the fight scenes are applied to the death sequences, and the eruptions of unremitting graphic carnage help lay some of the pacing issues and disharmonic tenors. Not entirely, but just enough to keep you involved. Another crucial element to keeping Upgrade a lively watch despite the overall movie feeling a bit too small a scale and slight of spectacle by our cinematic sci-fi standards is the captivating turn by Logan Marshall Green. He gives Grey a quiet charisma with a gruff exterior, hulking frame, and deep voice that plays as a welcome balance point against the diametrically opposed high-tech world he finds himself in. We obligingly idea with Grey through his dissociative surroundings, whether he's confined to a wheelchair and left only to emote from the neck up, or whether his technologically matty over physique allows him to physically dominate his foes. Marshall Green plays both ends of the spectrum with the same level of credence, which carries the narrative a long way, even when some of the aforementioned problem areas pop up. With an inferior performance, Upgrade's shortcomings would be far more unforgivably glaring. Fortunately for us, Marshall Green is able to mask some of the blemishes. All in all, Upgrade is by no means a substantial sci-fi game or even all that an inventive of a genre-bending rule breaker. It's a slight lowercase stint of cinematic science fiction whose promising premises almost undone by the unevenly struck tones, awkward action, and unstuck twist landing. Still, due to its subversive spirit, topical poignancy, vicious lashes of violence, and well-guided performance by Logan Marshall Green, the proceedings remain amusing enough. Like we all endure on our mobile phones every week, a minor upgrade can hurt too much. A super high-concept sci-fi thriller that plays like a feature-length Black Mirror episode written by Philip K. Dick and directed in the style of a 90s actioner. Upgrade could be one of the most energetic and purely likable movies of the summer. It's ridiculous. That's a given, and unfortunately, it relies so heavily on premise over plot or characterization. But that shouldn't stop audiences having an absolute blast in a movie packed with action set pieces, cool future tech, and a decent amount of gore to boot. Set in a near-future dystopia, Logan Marshall Green stars as Great Race, a car mechanic with an inherent mistrust of the tech that has taken over the world. Most cars are now driverless, a large chunk of police work is done remotely or via drones, and a handful of young geniuses are developing such advanced gadgets that the human workforce could become obsolete anytime soon. In a terrible bit of irony, a horribly accident leaves Grey Paris, now the highly advanced gem flip invented by a precocious entrepreneur and keener Harrison Gilbertson is the only thing that can give Grey back his freedom and his life. And for better or worse, Ida gives him a whole lot more on top. Though the trailer gives a strong sense of where the first half of the movie is heading. Music, if you can avoid it, you'll be treated to the joy of one of the funniest, coolest, most surprising action sequences of the summer. As Grey finally understands the capabilities of FASTEM, the implant that's allowed him to walk again. A little bit Matrix. A little bit John Wick with a big chunk of sci-fi fabulous. Absolute kudos should go to Marshall Green and director Leah Whannell for pulling it off. Whannell is probably best known for his collaborations with James Wan, co-writing and starring in Saw and Saw sequels and Insidious. Whannell directed Insidious Part 3. With Upgrade, Whannell has stepped out of James Wan's shadow and come into his own. Music, proving himself a distinctive and talented action director. The choreography of Upgrade is glorious, and Marshall Green handles it with style. There are plenty of clever twists and turns in the narrative. Upgrade is a satisfying and a complete vignette that we suspect will hold up to multiple viewings even after its secrets are revealed. Why only 3 stars then? The problem with Upgrade is that the setup and concept are so stronger that what actually happens is both repetitive and predictable, making the second half of the film bizarrely boring for a movie this pacey and action-packed. Instead, Upgrade plays like a video game movie where Grey has to use his skills to defeat a series of baddies one after the other. Upgrade is also guilty of playing to some very familiar tropes. No spoilers, and because it fits into a fairly well-tread subgenre, fear of technology, and IDUS taking over. It feels at times like a bit of a mashup of several other things, entertaining and stylish, but somewhat throwaway. The dialogue is often expositional and functional, and the characterization is flimsy. The new Blade Runner. This is not still for fans of films like The Guest, The Purge, and The Matrix will enjoy a healthy bit of topher. Upgrade is excellent fun, and the world of Upgradea is perfectly suited to a sequel, too. We wouldn't be surprised if Lee Wayne will go to his very own franchise at last. Or a summer bar of big hitters, in a cinematic era saturated with a multi-million-dollar comic book films and ever-growing expanded universes. Music, original fun and slightly silly B-movies like Upgrade and the might feel like a welcome palate cleanser. Back to a basics entertainment running under 2 hours which require no prior knowledge and not much mental or emotional investment. Upgrades. Fear of a homogenist and dehumanist society is a message which works as a metaphor for the movie. 2. If the MCU in itself are the super slick successful equivalent of cinematic IDUS, then Upgrade is the human and flawed alternative. Rough around the edges. Yes, but somehow more charming for it. At some point in the near future, a man called Gray fixes cars and then after an attack needs fixed himself. The same solid B-movie revenge tradition as Mandy and the same solid B-movie Fuyan bargain tradition as Venom is Upgrade, and it's not quite certain we know which is some distance from now, but recognizably in reach there is a place here that looks at once like a city in Australia trying not to be into what a future imagined by people who have seen The Matrix would and does look like. There is also a magic robot that lives in a computer chip, but we'll get to that. This is a second feature Rossa director for Lee Wayne, who also writes something audiences will be more familiar with as he's responsible for the earlier outings in the Saw family as well as the Insidious series. I've seen Insidious. I can recall almost no details of it, save that I'd sufficiently slid past my critical distance that I woke my partner with a fit of night terrors. I can quite place what element of it roused the primate nestled in my subconscious to awaken hoot in fear, but a subtler sinister shadow is also found in Upgrade. Gray trace Logan Marshall Green repairs old muscle cars, an analog contrast to the self-guiding electro his lawyer wife, Asha Trace, Melanie Vallow, uses to get around. He delivers one to his latest client, Asha's client, 2. Somewhat reclusive genius Keen, Harrison Gilbertson. Keen is a bit odd, the love child of Justin Bieber and Elon Musk, a wizard with a pet cloud and a magic house, one in which he keeps a chip called STEM. I went with the expectation that I'd see some good old-fashioned cyberpunk inflicted kick-you-punch, and was not disappointed. 3 are good villains. Benedict Hardy's Fiska is demonstration that sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishably from magic. He can near enough kill with a word, but Dune is less a touchstone if for this than other works. Early on, Ian was reminded of a quote from a William Gibson novel, and in that act of remembering effectively uncovered what it was to be a later twist, so shall spare you sight of it. Later, I was minded to swear at the screen because it seems to play with such a basic and annoying trope of fantastic fiction that my primal urges were as quickly stirred also the nocturnal yelp in the middle. I was properly entertained. There's a particular unity of camera and actor movement that's good enough that they use it in the trailer and more than once in the film, and that trick of fast standing up is pretty neat. There's nothing especially new, but it's well executed. And that sense of fatality and a number of pretty visceral horror and body horror elements permeate. It's noted without issues. Ash's death is a motivating factor, and though there's a female detective, Betty Gabriel, investigating the attack, and subsequent revenges, there are bits of gender balance that still worry. There's a hacker whose railing against binary conventions is perhaps as discomforting as L337 asking for equal rights, and that's before we add the business of torture, of outsourcing violence, of Turing tests and devilish details. Upgrade isn't for everyone. If nothing else, It's basically just an enhanced version of an older story. But also revenge sagas go, it's smooth running, well constructed, and pulls a lot of options out of a few simple choices. If you're at all inclined, don't skip it. Upgrade is a movie about a man who looks like Tom Hardy, who becomes incredibly violent and skilled at fighting thanks to a symbiotic add-on embedded inside him. He can talk out aloud to the implant's voice, and has the only one who can hear it. With the help, the Tom Hardy type is able to easily defeat a bevy of anonymous alley thugs and their ilk, though he's plagued with the suspicion that the implant might not be entirely moral. In the film written and directed by Sako Krita Early Wannell, the Tom Hardy type is Logan Marshall Green. In the upcoming movie Venom, which shares an almost identical plot, the Tom Hardy type is Tom Hardy. It's unfair to criticize Upgrade for sharing a similar log lineage to another upcoming movie with a similar-looking star that can be chalked up to a poor timing or unlucky casting. And so instead, let's criticize Upgrade for also sharing a log line with about a dozen other movies and television shows. Might I point you to Deadpool 2, which, a spoiler alert, follows a suicidal manga with enhanced fighting abilities trying to get revenge after the death of his wife. That's not to say a movie isn't necessarily bad for treading in well-worn territory, but Upgrade does a little else. There was probably a no-need draft a theme or central idea that the movie was attempting to convey, but the thesis must have long ago been lost to the tsunami of clunky dialogue. The characters repeatedly refer to each other as husband and wife, so the audience understands they are in fact a husband and wife and a generic futuristic aesthetic. Discussing plot holes feels like a bit of a waste of space. You know exactly what you're getting with this movie. What does it matter? Say if Gray Marshall Green ISA delivered case files from the police officer tasked with solving his ex-wife's murder. As if civilians are certainly enlisted in detective work, does it matter that the same police officer can identify Gray via the city's ubiquitous drone cameras outside a suspect's house, but somehow not see him stand up from his wheelchair and walk, which he does on the street in plain view? Will the average viewer roll their eyes at the fact that neither the police nor Gray noticed that the thugs who shot him weren't using conventional guns, but weapons implanted in their arms? Does it matter that Gray doesn't think to report this incredibly relevant information to the police? The fight scenes in which the symbiote, in which the STEM chip takes over Gray's motor functions are well shot and fun? But in addition to action sequences, we also get about 3 moments of explicit gore, all of which are shown in the trailer that serve no purpose but to make the audience wins in a movie that otherwise presents itself as a sci-fi thriller. Perhaps it was force of habit on Wannell's part after working on so many Saw movies. That tonal whiplash is perhaps best embodied in a scene in which a villain, a fellow upgraded humana like our hero, enters an off-the-grid biker bar and kills the bartender by sneezing at him with tiny knives and his mucus particles. This is not played for laughs. Upgrade ends with a twist so obvious that the only way you'll be surprised is if you've suffered your own recent chip implant that has wiped your memory of every movie you've ever seen. As a movie, it's the cinematic equivalent of paint by numbers. Competent, attractive, even. But take a single step closer, and the lines peck through. There's no need to pay money to go see Upgrade if you select it on a plane and sleep through. Music 60% of it. You have seen it in its entirety. Upgrade is a knockout blend of sci-fi, horror, and action. A seemingly simple premise leads to an intriguing foray into the evolution of man and the use of artificial intelligence. It's a heady turn in the bloodbath. Upgrade is spectacularly violent, but not torture porn. There's a method to the brutality. The world depicted is not that far away. I wish the mystery element were more refined. A minor drawback, but it prevents Upgrade from reaching loftier heights. Upgrade takes place in the near future. Logan Marshall Green stars as Great Race, an old-fashioned grease monkey surrounded by advanced technology. He spurns a high-tech, but his beautiful wife, Melanie Vallow, embraces it. She has a self-driving car and 3D prints instead of old-fashioned cooking. Their home is a wonder of automation. Gray's life changes dramatically after delivering a muscle car to a recluse via inventor, Harrison Gilbertson. A savage attack destroys his idyllic world, leaving him paralyzed and bitter. He watches helplessly as the leaded detective, Betty Gabriel, struggles to find answers. Gray gets a top-secret chance to be healed. A cutting-edge AI processor, STEM, can bridge the divide between his mind and body. The results are miraculous, but with an unexpected side effect. STEM gives Gray the ability to move his body with mechanical precision. He has been upgraded as a human. Gray enters this new frontier with one objective: revenge. Upgrade can be analyzed on multiple levels. As a science fiction film, it is extraordinary. The future is both wondrous and frightening. Automated homes, cars, police drones. Technology is helpful and efficient. It's even more amazing when the medical possibilities are explored. But this is when the lines blur into something dark and sinister. Gray's use of STEM and the similarly upgraded villains he faces portray the horrific potential. A gun embedded in your arm is far deadlier. Close your eyes as your body exacts machine-like murder. At what point does humanity give up control to artificial intelligence? The scenario is all too real. Upgrade has hardcore ass-kicking action scenes. The area brilliantly shot by Wayne L. and cinematographer Stefan Duccio. Gray's movements when using STEM are clearly a puppet-like. They succeed in showing what a machine can do in control of the human body. To be clear, this isn't Terminator or cyborgs run amok. Gray's upgrade is entirely believable in context of this story. Wayne's script posits a realistic future. All present signs point to these advancements being achieved. Upgrade is a warning about the consequences. Repairing paralysis will be welcomed. But that level of biological manipulation can spur horrific outcomes. A mystery lies at the center of Gray's attack. The character, with the help of STEM, seeks the truth mercilessly. The big reveal is expected. The clues are dropped like lead weights. It's not entirely obvious, but I was able to deduce where the plot was going quickly. Upgrade flies by with a 95 runtime. The film will keep you glued to the screen. Wayne L. had leeway to bulk up the story elements. Another 10 minutes of exposition would have added dramatic heft. I understand the reasoning. Upgrade is produced by Jason Blum and Neon under the BH Tilt banner. Blum is the king of micro-budget horror. He aims for short and sweet. Upgrade fits that mold, but could have surpassed it. The plot, execution, and tremendous entertainment value warranted more screen time. Upgrade is a must-see. It straddles several genres successfully. The violence isn't for the squeamish, but does fit the story. Upgrade delves into the philosophical conundrum of artificial intelligence. It shows how unchecked technology advances with a dangerous intent. Lean now delivers his best film since Saw. The latest Blumhouse production is Lean, a playfully trashy sci-fi rip on its usual B-movies and its best and bloodiest teen sometime. In a dystopian future that specifically evokes 80s horrors such as Videodrome, RoboCop, and The Terminator, Technopop Gray. Logan Marshall Green is a record-collecting muscle car mechanic out for vengeance after his wife Melanie Vallow is killed by her car in an accident that also leaves him a quadriplegic. Former client and babyface evil genie user Keen Harrison Gilbertson suggests that for the small price of a non-disclosure agreement, Gray trial, his latest invention, STEM, a cockroach-shaped implant and feet-of biomechanical fusion that would allow him to move his limbs once more. The catch is that once inside Gray's brain, a STEM begins talking to him, making useful suggestions and strategies for tracking down Ash's killers, and with the permission, taking over his body in a combat, his arms and legs cracking, snapping, and slapping mechanically, made even more visceral by lurching, metallic sound effects. There's a goofiness to the proceedings that allows the film to become a kind of budget movie. STEM, he has a knife. yelps Gaia only for Stem to repost calmly. We have a knife too. And the moment so genuinely squirm-inducing body horror make a change from the anime that can sabotage movies determined to capture a younger audience. I had written Marshall Green off as a budget Tom Hardy. It's true that the two look uncannily similar, but his performance here is agile and interesting. Music plays into not against the ridiculousness of the material. It's still a small silly movie and there's nothing particularly novel or even of the moment about the technoseptic stance on machines, but also genre exercise. It's a fun ride, music ostensibly emerging out of nowhere. 2018's Upgrade is one of the biggest film-going surprises of the year. An old-school dark noirish sci-fi action thriller reminiscent of the Terminator and RoboCop. Upgrade was written and directed by Australian filmmaker Lee Whannell. Music. Who knows a thing or two about genre pieces? After scripting both Saw and Insidious, among other titles, a flying solo without frequent collaborator James Wan as a producer, Whannell acquits himself admirably here, elevating what is essentially a B-movie into A-grade territory. More or less an Australian movie with Blumhouse backing, this is precisely the type of inventive, smart, brutally violent, darkly humorous, and high-concept picture that John Carpenter would have created in the 1980s. In fact, it feels like a movie you would discover on a well-worn VHS cassette hiding at the back of a video rental store back in the day. If somebody spearheads of the release, I want it, set in an unspecified near future. Logan Marshall Green is a stay-at-home mechanic who fixes classic cars to sell it to rich collectors and prefers a more hands-on old-school lifestyle in the face of advanced ubiquitous technology. After visiting eccentric techs of client and Harrison Gilbertson, only a night Gray and his wife Asha Melania Vallo are ambushed and attacked by a group of cybernetically enhanced criminals, which leaves Asha dead and Gray paralleled from the neck down. Face it, with a life relying on computers and technology with no ability to use his hands. Gray falls into a heavy depression. However, Aaron presents him with the opportunity to gain back full use of his body via an illegal experimental operation to attach an artificial implant known as STEM, voiced by Simona Maiden, to his spine. Cured of his paralysis, but sworn to secrecy, Gray begins his own investigation into the men responsible for his condition, using his augmented body to kill them one by one. For the majority of its runtime, Upgrade plays out like a high-concept Death Wish reimagining, but Whannell has a few tricks up his sleeve. Twists and turns emerge out of the chaos, leading to a daring, jaw-dropping climax which recontextualizes the narrative, catapulting Upgrade above the ordinary. Admittedly, the narrative ingredients are standard order, including a police detective, Betty Gabriel, who suspects that Gray knows more about the Sudina murders than he lets on. But that's ostensibly the point. Upgrade is a postmodern subversion of the Hackney revenge fantasy formula, permeated with a relevant message relating to the dangers of automation. In addition, music and the meticulous world-building further bolsters the material, with Whannell painting a plausible picture of a future. The world of Upgrade is undeniably our own, but peppered with unobtrusive instances of speculative future technology. Lower socioeconomic areas exist in the vision of the future, while characters still use simpler items like tape recorders rather than feeling artificial or deliberately designed. This world feels lived in and believable, and all on a tiny budget produced in Australia for a reported cost of under $5 million. Upgrade's technical specs are far better than expected, shrewdly using every last cent out of the budget to create a flick that looks at least 4 or 5 times more expensive. This is only Whannell's second directorial outing, but he displays the confidence of a seasoned veteran. Who would have thought that the director of 2015's Paint by Numbers Insidious Chapter 3 would be capable of such a pronounced sense of cinematic style and personality, no matter the scene or environment. Waynell maintains a confident pace and his mise-en-scene is frequently smooth while discrete digital effects serve to enhance the practical sets. Additionally, Marshall Green nails the role of Gray, perfectly portraying the script's intense dramatics, as well also handling the intricate physicality the part requires. Stem's movements look subtly mechanical, from the smallest hand gestures to the precise fight choreography. Easily is selling the illusion with seemingly a little effort. He even convincingly pulls off the scenes during which he talks to Stem, moments that were at risk of looking ridiculous. An adept supporting cast surrounds Marshall Green with Maiden making a particularly positive impression as the voice of Fast M. Elsewhere, the likes of Fag Gilbertson, Need for Speed, Gabriel, Gato, and Benedict Hardy, Hackridge heed their marks effectively. Even Clayton Jacobson, director of Kenny, shows up in a minor role. Upgrade packs a punch during its visceral action beats, miraculously able to create a fresh look through specific fight choreography and inventive camera techniques, evoking the type of sheer elation that the first John Wick inspired back in 2014. This flick is a hard R, exhibiting a level of violence usually reserved for torture porn movies, but there is also a wise tact to the gory money shots, which is a testament to Waynell's well-judged direction. Furthermore, Stefan Ducio's digital cinematography is slick and assured, astutely using neon lighting to emphasize the retro vibe, making Upgrade look closer to a European art house flick helmed by Nicholas Winding Reverend. It is a bit of a shame that Upgrade was not showed on film stock considering the pedigree, but that's neither here nor there. Accompanying the visuals is a throwback synth score by Jed Palmer, which adds some mood and atmosphere, in addition to subtly accentuating the feeling of excitement during the adrenaline-pumping action sequences. A few short moments of obvious CGI blood do appear, but the special effects throughout the feature otherwise impress, particularly the convincing futuristic cityscapes. It's mind-blowing to consider that Upgrade was created for less money than so many nasty straight-to-video games that flood the bargain bin on a seemingly weekly basis. Upgrade is a superlative masculine entertainment. A throwback action thriller which exceeds all reasonable expectations to become one of 2018's best and most essential movies. Aside from the palpable Death Wish influence, the feature is essentially Alex Garland. Think Zambakana meets Nicholas Winding Refn with a hint of Black Mirror, and it will appeal to those who enjoy 80s and 90s genre pictures. In the face of so many expensive summer blockbuster spectacles, it's refreshing to witness this type of counter-programming that's committed to delivering more with less. It's just a nasty good time. If Upgrade was directed by and starred a black man in the lead role, it would be receiving accolades and Oscar talks like the studiously mediocre Get Out. Director Lee Waynell's Upgrade 2018 is a cautionary tale as old as sci-fi itself. This is a gritty take on some well-worn territory, but neatly splices together common tropes of the sci-fi and action genres with stylish execution. These pieces you've certainly seen before are fused together into something new. Hybridization is not just a part of Upgrade's genre blending, it is also a recurring theme in the film. Futuristic tech is embedded into all the surroundings in the world of Upgrade, from touchscreen panels on kitchen tabletops to imbued cars and aerial police drones monitoring crime from the skies. A car crash followed by a brutal mugging result in protagonist riot race, Logan Marshall Green, being left a quadriplegic and witnessing the murder of his wife, Melanie Vallow, only by infusing his own body with an iconic stem, Simon Maiden, is he able to overcome his condition and even gain some huge physical perks in the process. He uses his new advancements to seek a bloody revenge on those responsible for the death of his wife. Upgrade resurges to life through its kinetic action sequences where the whimsical camera work is a thrill to watch. Logan Marshall Green does a solid job all around in portraying Gray, and despite having no specific scene-stealing moments, It is in these brawl scenes where he excels. When things turn violent, Gray surrenders control of his body movements to his ally Stem, while conducts some pretty merciless takedowns on his enemies. Here, Green performs these calculated and surgical attacks through his limbs as Stem, whilst also reacting with sheer horror at Thessie's actions as Gray. I didn't know whether to laugh or recoil, so I did a bit of both. This is a film knows what it wants just as well as its protagonist does. I wouldn't blame you for expecting this type of story to deal with themes like humanity. Maybe you'd expect to see Gray coming to terms with what he has become whilst trying to hold on to who he was before his mechanical rebirth. Instead, this story bypasses conventions like this and stays streamlined with laser focus on the Gray's grisly mission. There is no time for big questions when there are people to pursue and vendettas to fulfill, although that's not to say the film doesn't take a breather or two. In fact, there are actually plenty throughout the 100-minute runtime. It suggests that these slower scenes can be pretty hollow. They don't do much to serve the characters or story beyond just paving the way for the next action sequence through exposition. This leaves such segments feeling like the bland vegetables you have to finish it before you can start dessert. The drama and enjoyability in these slower intervals may have you spending much of the film waiting for the next amazing throwdown. This really shouldn't be the case in a world that seems interesting, at least on the surface level that we are shown. Gray Logan Marshall Green is an old-school mechanica in a futuristic high-tech world of cars that drive themselves, smart houses, and criminals packed to the gills with computer hardware and cybernetics. He rebuilds relic gasoline-powered cars for the wealthy elite like recluse tech mogul Harrison Gilbertson. Gray's wife Asha Melanie Vallow is a high-tech Aries in her own right, working at a company that creatures implants and artificial limbs for injured people. When Gray and Asha hand deliver a car to Iron, the young genius shows them his latest creation, Stem, a computer implant that can power anything, even human bodies. As Gray and Asha return home, their smart car malfunctions, resulting in a horrific car accident. A gang of upgraded humans come down and gnaw them like vultures, killing Asha and paralyzing Gray. The local police area doing their best to find the men responsible but don't have enough to go on to find them. Aaron comes to Gray with an opportunity to become the first test subject for Stem. Reluctantly, he agrees and the implant is put directly into his brainstem. It interacts with his brain to give him full mobility on C again, as well as heightened reflex, speed, and strength, thanks to the chip activating more muscles than Gray would be able to do himself. One night, Willie Gray is going over drone footage of the night his wife was killed. Stem talks to him, voiced by Simon Maiden, pointing out details in the footage no human would notice, which leads to the identity of at least one of the men responsible for Asha's death. Only Gray can go to the police with this info, so he signed a gag order about the tech in his body. So Stem convinces him to look into it himself. The combo of Gray and Stem soon become a vigilante fighting a force, taking out Asha's killers one by one. A gang led by a more than a formidable upgraded human named Fiska Benedict Hardy. Upgrade is rated R for a very good reason. The violence is gruesome. While I'd heard there was plenty of violence here, it's more quality versus quantity. The violence depicted here is straight out of 1980s favorites like RoboCop or Total Recall, where heads were literally exploding and melting before our eyes. It harkens back to classic action flicks and a time before the American audience memory became such whims over what was acceptable to be shown for the public eye. The story of Upgrade, written and directed by Lee Wayne and Insidious, wasn't super original as the revenge action thriller is super popular genre right now with huge money makers like the John Wick series. However, the sci-fi elements and 80s style hardcore violence put this in a legal zone. Plus, it's got some great twists along the way as well to really set it apart. The cinematography by Stefano D'Asio is truly inspired. There's so many unique and interesting camera work throughout the piece that really make a upgrade in a class all its own. You almost need a computer chip embedded in your own brain to pick up on all the cool nuances in the look of this film. Logan Marshall Green looks, moves, and acts like a poor man's Tom Hardy. There were instances where I could have sworn it was Tom Hardy, so much so that I'm curious how I'll feel when the former Venom hits later this year, as the trailer for the Spider-Man spin-off actually felt like a knockoff of Upgrade's trailer. Still, Marshall Green did a damn good job carrying this film. He has a very expressive face, making me believe at times that he genuinely lost the control of his own body. He's that good. Equally great was our villain Benedict Hardy. He doesn't look like your typical bad guy, but he was a completely creepy badass that made me feel sorry for Anya, poor sap who got in his way. The rest of the cast did their jobs well enough, though nobody else really stood out. Was hopeful Betty Gabriel Wichenia as Detective Cortez, and she did her job, like the other secondaries, well enough, but overall, nothing to really declare as a breakout performance. Upgrade is a fun popcorn movie that's a tremendously entertaining and a tremendously violent, which should please action aficionados and genre fans. It's hardly the most original concept out there, and there are slow moments that dragged a bit, making the otherwise brisk 95 minutes runtime feel longer than it should. Overall, it was a bloody good time, even if it felt more like a Netflix original than a cinematic wide release. Woo! This is a crowd pleaser. The gathered audience packed the Liberty Theater in New Orleans for a much anticipated showing at the Overlook Film Festival. First things first, Upgrade is horror adjacent. It's not a straight-up horror movie. To suggest it's 50% action, 40% sci-fi, 10% a horror. IMDb lists it as action, a comedy, horror, and fails to list sci-fi, so, take that for what it's worth. That is not to take away the achievement that Waynell has pulled off. Waynell was being awarded as the Overlook Festival's 2018 A Visionary Award, which was established to honor a contemporary horror figure or a company, elevating the genre while fostering the community by providing opportunities for new talent to thrive. Waynell is best known for his work as an actor and writer in the Saw and Insidious franchises. Upgrade is the second feature film he has directed after Insidious, The Last Key, which was released earlier this year. After this, I'm guessing we're getting many more. Upgrade is a near-future take on where things may go if we let technology take us there. It's a wonderful thing and a terrifying idea, a proud trope for science fiction. Automated cars, digitally sensitive via everything, and drones fill the sky. Logan Marshall Green is great race, a man who still prefers to work on old Pontiac Firebirds, a man who trusts his hands more than the technology surrounding him. His wife Asha Melania Vallo is a cybernetics designer and has a very different take on the role of that technology. The two of them are invited to meet with a young technical wonderment, Ryn Harrison Gilbertson, who is showing Gray and Ash's STEM, the chip of the future. Gray is dubious about the whole newfangled technology, and as he and Asha are being taken home in their automated car, the car gets overwritten and the two are hijacked. A gang of thugs with guns embedded in their arms surrounds the couple, killing Asha and leaving Gray paralyzed. No explanation, no rationale. But don't worry, we'll get there. Gray is nursed back to health by his mother, and I would like to recognize that in a role that in many movies would be a throwaway supporting role. I really appreciated how Gray's mother is portrayed in this movie. She's there for him unconditionally. It's a small role, but it's devoid of the cliches of movies like this. There's no arguing or frustrations, just Betty and love. He is also supported by a series of robotic arms, Ash's firm's creations that help him with his medications. And he has a fancy wheelchair, but has a horribly depressed and tries to over-medicate his way into killing himself. In the hospital, he is approached by Aaron, who offers him the use of the STEM chip, which will reconnect his severed nervous system, and more. He agrees to the implant, Which is super hush hush, and indeed, there's a remarkable recovery. Gray walks. It's a medical miracle, right? Soon. He determines that the STEM chip can talk to him, and the chip suggests that they go out and get some justice. The cops are also hunting for Thea answers, but they are moving far too slow for Gray's desires. Gray and STEM eventually are able to identify one of the thugs, and Gray decides to pay him a visit. While searching the thug's apartment for clues, the thug returns home naturally, and the thug is thoroughly thrashing Gray around the living room when STEM suggests that Gray kicks in the upgrade. There's your title. Enter Gray, the kung fu killing machine. STEM is doing all the work, and the Gray's brain is a witness to mass destruction. Points to Marshall Green for his motions after he gets the STEM chip. His movements are suitably artificial and stiff and yet lightning quick when necessary. The fight choreography utilized some clever tracking mechanisms, and the flow of the fight scenes are wild, fluid, and comprehensible. Hollywood, take note. The remainder of the second and third acts involve Gray trying to find out who his would-be killers are, how to avoid the police finding out about his secret recovery, and most importantly, the story asks, who is really in control of Gray's body? It is a fantastic and dynamic trip that Emmanuel takes us on. The horror comes in the violence. The trailer will give you an idea of how brutal the fights get. Also, there are some dark twists to the film that convey something sinister going on and that has a bit of a horror bent, but again, more sci-fi than a horror. The audience roared at times, and this will be a movie to see in a packed house, as I do hope it gets the chance to start the buzz people. In his acceptance of the award, he had commented that he was trying to create a movie with the freedom of low-budget indie picture, but has the production values of a tentpole action movie. He had used Cameron's The Terminator as a template for how he wanted this picture to work. Which was a movie that maximized some modest budget to create a real powerhouse of a production. I would suggest that this movie has a strong thematic DNA tied to Paul Verhoeven's RoboCop. Other strong influences seem to be The Matrix, Music, The Raid, and Blade Runner 2049. This is a cyberpunk movie, which is a genre that seems to have disappeared after the 1990s. Which may be a testament to the state of our current technology, that the idea of plugging a jack into your skull is pointless if you have a good smartphone at your disposal with Wiki on it. William Gibson would be proud. Blumhouse has upped the budget for this film, but in its soul, it is still an indie picture. The exploration of the infusion of technology to the human body is a time-honored trope. And this upgrade is a worthy successor to the top of the sci-fi action fare setting of the near future. Technology controls nearly all aspects of life, but when Gray, a self-identified technophobe, also his world turned upside down, is only a hope for revenge is an experimental computer chip implant called STEM, putting a refreshing spin on the classic man-machine dynamic isn't an easy thing to accomplish. Take RoboCop as a prime example. It was remade to fit the current societal and political landscape, but fell flat on its face, saying nothing new, and as the worst offense of all was incredibly tame and boring. Lee Waynes, one of the co-creators of the Saw franchise and heavily involved with the ongoing Insidious franchise, Upgrade is unafraid to wear the classic 80s science fiction revenge cliches and technopunk atmosphere on its sleeve. But it also has a modern twist to it in the form of FastM, a new technological device surgically inserted into the user's body that can work godly miracles such as giving back a quadriplegic individual the ability to walk. Gray Logan Marshall Green a bit too animated and over the top in the role, but also ably to sell the improvements to him with both physical excellence and some decent comedic lines commenting on everything from technology to the body horror he indirectly ends up frequently causing old school. He prefers present-day vehicles instead of the futuristic automated ones his techie wife uses in her way and back to work. One day, Willie out together delivering a repaired care for one of his only remaining clients. The infrastructure of the digital vehicle is assumed, set off course, and crashed, all essentially leading to the brutal murder of his wife and being left for dead. Like I said, it's a story you're all probably familiar with. Uta feels fresh thanks to STEM, which Inta only used to bring back Gray's mobility. The male-sounding version of Lexa, voiced here by Simon, made into great effect at bringing out more humor and a sinister side, working as a cautionary tale against the rise and control of that technology is able to take over Gray's body completely with permission. STEM is essentially the voice in Gray's head that no one is aware of as Thea communicate verbally, transforming Thea Man into what functions as a hybrid of Batman and Spider-Man in terms of Thea's unparalleled ability to sense incoming attacks and counter them in the most effective way possible. The distinction between Gray and Gray while under control is methodically crafted, music giving the body robotic movements and a precise command over joints, similar to much of the fight choreography in the Matrix franchise. This comes as less of a surprise once you remember that Leo Whannell actually had a minor role in the series and is no doubt also drawing inspiration from working on that Zeta alongside his own self-professed influences such as The Terminator. All stylishly flavored with swirling camera movements and an edgy hard rock soundtrack that fits with the gnarly brutality from every death on the checklist of generic villains. Luckily, Upgrade tends to jump from only an impressively choreographed fight sequence to the next, as unless the narrative is taking a breather to analyze the mental toll that going from able-bodied and married to a quadriplegic failure. There's actually a surprisingly emotional attempt at an intentional drug overdose stopped by computers. The story is as formulaic as it comes from the genre. I don't think there's a single person in the audience that will be unable to spot the big twist from the very beginning of the film. And although the script does seem aware of this by pulling one last swerve on viewers with a darkly appropriate ending, there is almost zero effort put into fleshing out these antagonists or the nefarious companies they operate under. Upgrade zips along like a version of the original Blade Runner on speed. It even has a futuristic detective segment utilizing security camera footage as the structure is as simple as tracking down each man responsible for the attacks only by one. But honestly, that's all the movie needs. The modern-day twist of Fast M is successfully able to refresh all of the tired tropes we have seen in similar experiences now for decades. Gray may be going through an inner struggle that questions whether he is truly in control or not, as he accepts that the very thing he hates, technology, is his only option to independently seek out vengeance. You have the free will to purchase a ticket for this movie, and you absolutely should. In another summer crowded with big-budget blockbusters, Upgrade opts for practical effects and an 80s retro vibe while finding its own voice. Co-creating Saw and creating Insidious are huge accomplishments for a resume. Upgrade is the best work of Lee Wayne's career and deserves to find an audience. I walked into Upgrade not really knowing what to expect. I knew about some chipa and some guys back in the death of his wife, but nothing much else. What I was not expecting was to see a deeply emotional work of art, which does so much with its shoestring budget that Tia was shocked to see it only cost $5 million to make. It delves into the world of posthumanism that we are rapidly approaching as technology and biology blend together, but with all of it at its heart is a story about a man losing everything he loves and trying to live in a world where nothing will bring the love of his life back. So to set the scene. Music. In the not-so-distant future in an unnamed American city we open on Gray Logan Marshall Green, a technician that restores old cars for wealthy clients. He grew up in the poorer section of the city but escaped that life when he found the love of his life and now wife Asha Melanie Vallow, who is an executive for a bio-robotics company that helps create prosthetics for wounded soldiers. They live a happy life helped by the fact that Asha earns a lot of money for her job and Gray is doing what he loves, working with his hands. All of this changes one day after Gray and Asha dropped off a restored car to one of Gray's rich clients, Aon Harrison and Gilbertson. As they were driving back into the city in their automated car, they realized the car was not taking them home. In fact, it is taking them to the rough part of the city where the car is purposely crashed and Gray and Asha are dragged out of the car by a gang of fat thugs. Soon, even with police drones watching overhead and with help on the way, the gang shoot Asha in the stomach and Gray in the neck, being instantly erased. Gray can only watch as the life drains from Asha's eyes. 3 months later and Gray is out of hospital, but Ice is still a quadriplegic. While he has the technology to live in his house with the help of his mother Pamela, Linda Cropper, he has reached to the point of trying to find the office switch, as even though Detective Cortez, Betty, Gabriel, is trying, there has been no progress in finding the people that killed Asha. It is here where Ona finds him and offers him a chance to walk again if he puts his new chip stim into his back. It is a big success and Gray can walk again. But then one dry stem Simon Maiden talks back. Now the first thing that really sells Upgrade Ice is the acting, which really had to do a load of the work to sell this premise. Logan and Marshall Green had to do the interesting job of both looking terrified in his face as his body acted in a fluid and professional way. Ice really hard to sell that disconnect and to make it look believable, but Logan just makes it work. I think part of the Ice is the lengths they went to give him a character before the chip. Indeed, Willie, it was over quickly. I doubt Anya would not be moved by the time between the crash and the chip where he can only move his neck, as well as this. I liked all the touches that showed that it was a computer program moving his body and not a human. All his movements are fluid, but in almost an uncanny valley way. Like they move with speed, efficiency, and power. Music but not in a way that is natural. For example, when he is walking, he always turns on right angles rather than the diagonal. All of this comes to a head in the action sequences, which with the help of some of the great stunt doubles might be some of the best hand-to-hand combat sequences that I have seen so far this year. Though, also just a warning that these action scenes go from 0 to 100 real quick. And if you don't like gore, then there are a couple of moments that you may want to look away. The supporting cast was also really great. Benedict Hardy makes a great villain Fisk. Harrison Gilbertson is channeling a slightly nervous and reclusive Tech Titan. Also, it was great to see Linda Cropper here as Gray's mother. It's always great to see one of the Farscape alumni pop up in films. Betty Gabriel really steps up as the other side of the equation, trying to hunt down the people that killed Asha, but also then realizing that she might not be the only one hunting them. I knew I had seen her in something recent, and then it clicked that she was in Get Out's review our film of the year in 2017. This is such a different role, but on see again she shows such an amazing range, and I'm shocked that she is not in all of the things. Finally, this film shows just how important voice actors are. The film would not have worked nearly as well if there was not the excellent acting of Simon Maiden there to embody what is just a chip. While the acting is one part, the other is the really creative cinematography that you see throughout the film. You see this mostly in the action sequences when STEM take over the body of Gray and move autonomously. The first example of this one you have probably already seen in the trailer. The camera rises with Gray off the floor, so it feels like you are rising with him. There is also the moment when Gray is shot and the camera does a 368 degrees vertical pan flipping through the sky. Gray's life is forever changed below. These moments elevate the film beyond just being visually interesting because they help bring the idea of what is going on in his body to the forefront visually, and as the saying goes, show don't tell. Add to this, the film houses on the great set design, creating a world that is far in the future, but also believable with what we currently understand about technology. And also, as I mentioned in the opening, it is crazy how much they got out of such a small budget. As well as this, I also have to give credit to the musical score by Jed Palmer that soared when it needed it to soar and fell into the background when it needed it to be unobtrusive. Though I will say this is a very loud film, so take caution if you have any hearing issues. Also, just before we end, I want to take a moment to show out some of the themes of the film and things that we are dealing with at the moment or in the near future. And just a warning that there may be some slight spoilers in this paragraph. You have the rise of automation, and what does that mean for the workforce when all of the jobs become automated? This is happening today and we still do not have a good idea as to what we can do here. Also, the role of augmentation, post-humanism. This is something that has been delved into before in films like Ghost and the Shell, Iron and Blade Runner, and it really works here, even if it is just a side part of the narrative. When you would break it all down, Upgrade at its heart is a mystery film where the mystery is who and why did they kill Asha and leave Ia Gray for dead, without getting too much into the specifics. I was really interested in how it all worked out, and I have to give props to that really a ballsy ending. In the end, do we recommend Upgrade? Yes, of course we do. The action is great, the acting is spot on, the story is intriguing, and the production is fantastic. Indeed, I wish more films would take some creative risks like this, and I wish more studios would support riskier films. And while we are at it, I hope audiences go and see them. Upgrade is one of those films where I kind of think that it would be best to go see it in the cinemas if you can, because I foresee it being one of those culty classics that people talk about for years to come. My initial encounter with Upgrade was a miserable movie-going experience. It was Saturday of South by Southwest 2018 and I was coming down from a healthy beer buzz fueled by plentiful day drinking as well as an open bar party prior to the film's midnight premiere. That inebriation factor is 100% on me. Other external influences were beyond my control. The screening didn't begin on time, which is not at all uncommon at any festival with a million moving parts. Ordinarily, a slight delay wouldn't be a big deal, except Upgrade also included some poorly planned pre-show hullabaloo featuring Jason Blum in a lab coat emceeing as Samiania received a live rapid injection. The device injection didn't make much sense as supposed entertainment, and also it didn't work, leaving bewildered attendees to wonder we're starting an hour late for this. Add in the fact that daylight saving time was coming into play and Upgrade was effectively 2 hours behind. Add a post-screening queue on top of that. And remember, seating began 38 minutes before the originally scheduled start time, and you're looking at incarceration in your cramped theater chair for an unreasonably big block of time. Call me crabby if you want. I won't put up a fight. But festival programmers and the presenters ought to take note. If your 90-minute midnight movie doesn't send audience home until after 4 o'clock a.m.com, that's an issue highly likely to unfavorably salt their moods. It did for me in this circumstance anyway, as he left Upgrade utterly blurry and perhaps unfairly projected annoyance onto my perception of the movie. I later wrote a rough draft review based on a lot of negative notes. One of those notes was, I'm bored. Possibly written as an unheard plea for rescue. An author scribbled sentence simply said, this is a disappointment. Ultimately, I didn't publish that koala raking, as much as I'd like to believe you can disassociate environment from experience. I had to consider that a hunger, a headache, and tired frustration influenced impartiality. Particularly since the movie received praise everywhere else, including a winning South by Southwest's Audience Award in the Midnighters category. Omia Video afforded another swing at Upgrade under more comfortable conditions, even at the end. Music. A rating initially scored at 4,500 rose to 6,500, although I'll entertain the possibility that my first viewing left such a bad taste that the score should be higher still. Conversely, assumptive guilt could have primed me too positively for the second spin. And I was actually in a point the first time. Who knows? I only offer this anecdotal digression to frame where I'm coming from, comparing what wrote after South by Southwest to what think now. I can say that I was definitely wrong about my initial assessment of actor Logan Marshall Green. Marshall Green cemented me as a supporter after his perfectly pitched performance in the invitation review Here, Are and Away, my favorite film of that 2015. At first, I was surprised to read one of my old notes that simply said, Logan Marshall Green isn't right for this role. Looking back, I realized the problem wasn't the performance, it was the character. Great Trace is a hands-on mechanic, an old-school craftsman who struggles to fit into a future where artificial intelligence and automation dominate everyday life. He's meant to be an ordinary man caught in extraordinary circumstances, much like a classic Hitchcock protagonist trapped in the wrong place at the wrong time. On paper, though, the character leans heavily on familiar stereotypes, making him feel more conventional than compelling. Fortunately, Logan Marshall Green elevates the material with a remarkable performance. Just as the STEM implant transforms Gray from a paralyzed victim into a lethal fighter, Marshall Green breathes genuine life into the character. He fills even the smallest moments with subtle emotional detail, adding humor, vulnerability, tension, or quiet determination whenever the script allows. Even when Gray himself isn't especially engaging, Marshall Green's charisma and complete commitment make him impossible to look away from, carrying the film through its weaker moments. Not every casting choice is as successful. Harrison Gilbertson portrays billionaire tech genius Aaron Keane with an extremely restrained performance that often comes across as flat rather than mysterious. Instead of conveying brilliance, his awkwardness sometimes feels emotionally vacant. The villains are also a mixed bag. Among the four henchmen Gray hunts down, it's difficult to understand why the quiet, mustached character was chosen as the primary antagonist, as he never projects the level of menace the role demands. The screenplay adopts a structure that resembles a video game, with Gray moving from one enemy to the next before reaching the final confrontation. While this progression keeps the story moving, it also becomes repetitive, especially since many of his investigations lead to similar locations and the eventual twist is fairly easy to anticipate. To his credit, writer-director Lee Wannell squeezes every ounce of creativity from the film's modest budget, drawing on the filmmaking skills he developed during his independent film career. He crafts action scenes that feel far more dynamic than their simple choreography suggests. Sharp cinematography, energetic editing, and inventive camera work make every fight feel fast, brutal, and impactful. The lighting and visual design do an excellent job of creating a colorful, believable vision of the near future, even when the limited production budget prevents larger or more elaborate sets. Wannell understands how to use technical filmmaking techniques to maximize every dollar on screen, giving Upgrade a polished visual style that exceeds expectations. That said, the budget limitations are occasionally noticeable. One of the film's car chases, for example, never generates much excitement, often looking like two vehicles simply weaving through traffic at relatively safe speeds. Many fans celebrate Upgrade for its unapologetic violence, graphic practical effects, and old-school action movie attitude reminiscent of the era when Arnold Schwarzenegger dominated the genre. The film embraces fist fights, car crashes, and the revenge-driven hero with complete confidence. That retro style is part of its charm, although it also introduces moments that some viewers may find cheesy, implausible, or outdated. Personally, I don't think Upgrade feels like a low-budget 1980s Schwarzenegger blockbuster. Instead, it resembles a bigger-budget version of a Wild Full Moon-style sci-fi action film, over-the-top, energetic, and unashamedly entertaining. Whether that sounds appealing or not depends entirely on your taste. I've found myself appreciating the movie from different perspectives over multiple viewings. Right now, my conclusion is that Upgrade succeeds at exactly what it sets out to do. It delivers stylish action, imaginative science fiction, and satisfying revenge thrills. Not every element works perfectly, and a few moments miss the mark, but those imperfections somehow fit the film's delightfully retro, pulpy personality. Of course, my opinion could always change. After all, my first two viewings led me to completely different conclusions, so a third watch might reveal something new once again. Synopsis: set in the near future, where technology controls nearly every aspect of daily life, Upgrade follows Great Race, a self-proclaimed technophobe who prefers working with machines he can touch rather than computers that think for themselves. After a brutal attack leaves his wife dead and him paralyzed from the neck down, Gray's only chance for revenge comes in the form of STEM, an experimental artificial intelligence implant capable of restoring his mobility and granting him extraordinary physical abilities. Review: following the Oscar-winning success of Get Out, many expected Blumhouse Productions to continue pursuing prestige projects aimed at awards recognition. Instead, the studio returned to what it does best, producing smart, entertaining genre films with modest budgets and ambitious ideas. Written and directed by Lee Wannell, whose collaborations with James Wan helped create the Saw and Insidious franchises, Upgrade is exactly the kind of lean, high-concept thriller that thrives on creativity rather than spectacle. It delivers tense science fiction ideas, bone-crunching action, and enough surprises to remain consistently engaging. Echoing classic 1980s revenge-driven science fiction films like RoboCop, Upgrade explores themes of technology, identity, and control while wrapping them inside an intense action thriller. Although it has a few shortcomings, it ultimately becomes much more than a simple revenge story. The film is set in a near future where self-driving cars represent luxury, advanced cybernetic enhancements are commonplace, and technology has become inseparable from everyday life. At the center of the story is Great Race, played by Logan Marshall Green, an old-fashioned mechanic who restores vintage muscle cars and has little interest in modern technology. Gray enjoys a peaceful life with his wife, Asha, played by Melanie Vallejo, a successful executive at a robotics company. Their lives are shattered after the self-driving vehicle they're traveling in suddenly malfunctions and crashes in the low-income neighborhood where Gray grew up. Before emergency responders can arrive, a group of mysterious attackers ambushes the couple without warning. Asha is killed during the attack, while Gray survives with a devastating spinal injury that leaves him paralyzed. Stripped of his independence and consumed by grief, he accepts an experimental eye implant called STEM, unknowingly setting himself on a violent path of revenge that will challenge everything he believes about humanity, technology, and free will. After a devastating attack leaves Great Race paralyzed and his wife dead, his life seems beyond repair. Everything changes when billionaire tech prodigy Rankine offers him an experimental solution, STEM, a revolutionary artificial intelligence microchip designed to function as an advanced second brain. The implant restores Gray's mobility, giving him a chance to reclaim his life. Frustrated by Detective Cortez's inability to make progress in the murder investigation, Gray accepts Ren's offer and soon discovers that STEM grants him extraordinary physical and mental abilities. Driven by grief and vengeance, he begins hunting down those responsible for his wife's death. Whenever he's outmatched, STEM, voiced by Simon Maidana, can temporarily take complete control of his body, turning Gray into an unstoppable force. What could have been a routine Black Mirror-style concept instead becomes a wildly entertaining and brutally satisfying revenge thriller under the direction of Lee Wannell. At its heart, the story follows a familiar revenge formula, but its inventive sci-fi premise, unpredictable twists, and energetic execution prevent it from falling into the usual genre cliché ~copyright-esque. Although the opening act spends a little too much time establishing Gray and Asha's relationship, the film truly comes alive once Gray receives the STEM implant. From that point onward, the mystery takes a backseat to the fascinating relationship between Gray and STEM. The eye gradually becomes both his greatest ally and his most dangerous influence, with the two constantly shifting between the roles of voice of reason and reckless loose cannon. Gray isn't a trained soldier or secret operative, he's simply a mechanic. That makes his transformation all the more compelling. STEM essentially becomes an alternate personality. With Gray's permission, the eye gains complete control over his motor functions, leaving Gray fully conscious but unable to influence his own body. This clever concept leads to some of the film's funniest and most memorable moments, as Gray's horrified facial expressions clash with the flawless martial arts performed by his eye-controlled body. As the story builds toward its climax, Gray's relationship with Stem grows increasingly complex. Their partnership evolves into a psychological struggle, raising unsettling questions. Is Stem simply helping Gray achieve his revenge, or is it pursuing its own hidden agenda? The answers are surprisingly dark, and they elevate the film beyond a straightforward revenge story. Thanks to its relentless energy and imaginative concept, Upgrade feels fresh, suspenseful, and consistently entertaining. Logan Marshall Green deserves enormous credit for his performance. He convincingly separates Gray's facial reactions from his body's robotic precision, creating a unique physical performance that is both unsettling and darkly comedic. Watching him brutally dismantle opponents while desperately pleading with them to stop is one of the film's greatest strengths. Li Wan also presents a believable vision of the near future, where advanced technology has seamlessly merged with everyday life. The film explores the increasingly blurred boundary between humans and machines, echoing classics like The Terminator and the underrated Cyborg. Yet despite these influences, Upgrade never feels like a simple imitation or an exercise in nostalgia. Instead of focusing on bulky robotic enhancements, the film imagines cybernetic evolution on a microscopic level through invisible nanotechnology and biochemical engineering. This fresh perspective makes its futuristic world feel both modern and believable. The production design deserves special praise. While familiar cyberpunk elements such as holograms, drones, and futuristic cityscapes are present, production designer Felicity Abbott gives them a surprisingly organic appearance. Honeycomb textures, triangular patterns, and nature-inspired design elements blend technology with biology, reinforcing the film's central themes of humanity and artificial intelligence becoming increasingly intertwined. This visual style feels genuinely distinctive, especially when contrasted with the gritty underground world Gray enters during his search for revenge. The criminal underworld introduces disturbing yet inventive technology, including palm-mounted firearms and microscopic nanites capable of destroying a victim from within, making every encounter feel unpredictable. The action sequences are undoubtedly the film's biggest highlight. They're fast, violent, brutally choreographed, and often infused with dark humor. Gray's conversations with Stem add welcome wit throughout the bloodshed, giving the film a playful self-awareness that prevents it from becoming overly grim. Wan also shows admirable restraint with the visual effects, blending practical effects with CGI rather than relying on spectacle alone. The film doesn't constantly overwhelm viewers with gore. Instead, it carefully builds tension before unleashing shocking bursts of violence, making every brutal encounter feel impactful. Gray's first major fight perfectly demonstrates this approach, while each subsequent confrontation escalates the brutality. Stephen Dusho's sharp cinematography and Andy Caney's fast-paced, kinetic editing work together beautifully, making every action sequence feel dynamic, immersive, and visually exciting. That said, the screenplay doesn't fully capitalize on its fascinating premise. While the central concept is undeniably original, the story could have explored its ideas with greater depth and taken more creative risks. The supporting characters also receive limited development. Aside from Gray, most of the cast including Betty Gabriel as Detective Cortez and Harrison Gilbert as Nosran Keena are given relatively little material, causing some performances to rely on familiar genre archetypes. These shortcomings feel less like major flaws and more like missed opportunities. As a result, the film's final twist, although effective, may seem somewhat predictable despite its stylish presentation. Fortunately, Logan Marshall Green anchors the entire film with an outstanding lead performance. Avoiding excessive sentimentality, he delivers a restrained yet emotionally compelling portrayal that perfectly captures Gray's grief, desperation, and gradual loss of control. Overall, Upgrade is an inventive, action-packed sci-fi thriller that successfully blends brutal action, psychological horror, dark humor, and thought-provoking science fiction. With its clever premise, stylish direction, memorable performances, and unique take on artificial intelligence, it stands out as one of the most entertaining genre films of its year. Film information. A Sense Director, Lee Wan. A Sense Writer, Lee Wan. A Sense Producer, Jason Blum. A Sense Starring, Logan Marshall Green. A Sense Cinematography, Stefan Dushel. A Sense Editor, Andy Canny. A Sense Music, Jed Palmer. A Sense Production Company, Blumhouse Productions. A Sense Distributor, OTL Releasing. A Sense Release Date, March 10, 2018. A Sense Running Time, 100 minutes. A Sense Country, United States. A Sense Language, English. A Sense Budget, $3 million. A Sense Worldwide Box Office, $17 million.